Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Fred Kaplan's new book, The Bomb: Presidents, Generals, and the Secret History of Nuclear War. This is from the introduction. For 30 years after the Cold War ended, almost no one thought, much less worried, about nuclear war. Now, almost everyone is fearful. But the fear takes the form of a vaguely paralyzed anxiety. Because of the long reprieve from the bomb's shadow, few people know how to grasp its dimensions. They've forgotten, if they ever knew. The holiday from history began on August 8, 2017, when President Donald Trump, barely 6 months in office, told reporters at his golf resort in Bedminster, New Jersey, that if the North Koreans kept threatening the United States with harsh rhetoric and missile tests, quote, they will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen, end quote. Even those who didn't remember President Harry Truman's similar description 72 years earlier of the atomic bomb that destroyed Hiroshima, Truman said, a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth. It was clear that in language more bellicose than any president since the end of World War II, Trump was talking about launching nuclear weapons at North Korea. Not if its leader, Kim Jong-un, first attacked the United States, but merely if he developed the ability to do so. Then, 6 months later, Trump signed and released his administration's Nuclear Posture Review, a 74-page document that called for building new types of nuclear weapons and integrating them with the military's conventional war plans. In short, for treating nuclear weapons as normal. The red lights flashed. The alarm bells rang furiously. Yet here is what few recognized. None of these notions were new. The president himself seemed a departure from the norm. His character, erratic, eruptive, thin-skinned, willfully uninformed, a combustive mix for a world leader with his finger on the button. But the button and everything around it were the same. In those decades when most of us chose to forget the bomb, as global tensions calmed and fallout shelters crumbled and we turned our gaze to other problems and pleasures, the nuclear war machine continued to rumble forth in the beyond top-secret chambers of the Pentagon, the Strategic Command Headquarters in Omaha, the weapons labs in various parts of the country, and the think tanks whose denizens never stopped thinking about the unthinkable. They all kept at their singular task, wrestling with the dilemmas posed by the bomb's existence. How to deter nuclear war? How to fight a nuclear war if it cannot be deterred? How to win it, if such a thing is even possible? This is the nature of the nuclear era, and the era never drifted into suspension, even if our attention did. Trump snapped us out of our slumber, reminded those of us who were old enough to know, and informed those who weren't, that the bomb is still here. In public over the years, officers and officials have described America's nuclear policy as a second strike deterrence. If an enemy strikes us with nuclear weapons, we will retaliate in kind. This retaliatory power is what deters the enemy from attacking us. In reality, though, American policy has always been to strike first preemptively, or in response to a conventional invasion of Allied territory, or to a biological or large-scale cyber attack. In any case, not just as an answer to nuclear attack. All of these options envision firing nuclear weapons at military targets for military ends. They envision the bomb as a weapon of war writ large. This vision has been enshrined in the American military's doctrines, drills, and exercises from the onset of the nuclear era through all its phases. Most presidents have been skeptical of this vision, morally, strategically, practically, but none of them have rejected it. Some have threatened to launch nuclear weapons first as a way of settling a crisis. The few who considered adopting a no first use policy, in the end, decided against it. There are rationales for these doctrines, drills, and exercises, and for the retention of the first use option. They are driven by policies, personalities, and bureaucratic rivalries, but also by a logic which, once its premises are accepted, hurls its adherents and the rest of us into a rabbit hole of increasingly bizarre scenarios that seem increasingly, if strangely, rational the deeper they're probed. Understanding the nuclear era, the era of our lifetime, means understanding the rabbit hole. who dug it, and how we got stuck inside. It means tracing the maze of its tunnels, which is to say the arc of its history. A story enmeshed in secrecy, some of it still secret, much of it now illuminated by declassified documents and interviews with key actors, though never fully told. How did we get to this second coming of nuclear panic? How did we wind up with thousands of nuclear weapons, far more than any war aims could justify? What propelled the nuclear arms race during the decades-long Cold War? And what happened to the weapons and their guardians after the Cold War ended? And how and why did any of this persist? Chapter 1, Killing a Nation. 10. The book Fred Kaplan's The Bomb.
We say fight back!
Years of strategy and struggle against the prison industrial complex. It's a collection of essays. This one is by David Gilbert on page 31, titled The System Within the System, the Prison Industrial Complex and Imperialism. For those of us held behind locked gates within the walls and fences topped with razor wire, the corrections regime is the system that works tirelessly to impose total control over every aspect of our lives. Yet as ponderous and powerful as prisons are, they're only one part, a central girder, of a much bigger and more foreboding house of horrors, which can most accurately be named imperialism. The structural needs of the larger edifice set the specifications for the size and position of the girder. The strength of the girder helps determine how long the building itself will stand. We can't understand the explosion of imprisonment in the United States since 1971 without looking at an imperialism's urgent needs and goals of that period. By the same token, we can't develop an effective program around the prison industrial complex without grappling with the stresses and trends of the larger system of imperial rule. To be clear, before you take time to read this chapter, I don't offer any brilliant ideas on strategy. Those will most likely emerge from the organizing and activist efforts themselves. However, some of the concerns discussed may raise questions that go into forming strategy. I definitely look forward to learning from the dialogues that this generates on these issues. Imperialism may sound like the kind of rhetoric we want to avoid, but it's one word that needs to be rescued as the best way to name the system that rules over us. The basis of imperialism is the relentless quest for profits around the globe. Its most striking characteristic is the colossal and grotesque polarization of wealth. That polarization happens between nations, between the rich countries of the North and the impoverished ones of the global South, the impoverished countries of Africa, Latin America, and parts of Asia, and at the same time within each country based on class, race, and gender. The poles of dazzling wealth and abject poverty are intimately linked, as the former results from the ruthless plunder of the latter. This system is built on and intensifies all the major forms of oppression, patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy, all of which are structurally central. At the same time, imperialism highlights the global character of the system in a way that explains why the most intense oppression and resistance have been in the South, and that also provides the context for why the liberation struggles of the various people of color have been in the forefront within the U.S. There's no way to capture what the system costs in human life and potential, the pain and loss for all of us. Close to 1 billion human beings suffer chronic hunger, while another 2 billion face nutritional deficiencies. 1 billion lack access to clean drinking water. Just looking at children under the age of 5, imperialism is a holocaust in progress. Over 9 million die every year from easily preventable causes associated with poverty. The price for future generations may be even more severe as the rapaciousness of this global frenzy for profits threatens the very ecological basis for sustaining human life on any scale on our planet. Since most people won't accept living in squalor amid plenty, imperialism entails both the most sophisticated and the most brutal forms of social control. Its most salient feature is war after war after war, mainly against the peoples of the South. The domestic front line of such repression is a truly violent and harmful prison industrial complex. Today, 2,300,000 people are held behind bars, about 7 times the number in 1971. That explosion was unprecedented, coming after a 70-year period when the rates of imprisonment had remained more or less constant. This dramatic change did not result from some sudden skyrocketing of criminal activity, but rather from a radical expansion of what was designated as a crime and a draconian increase in the punishments for those crimes. Such extreme measures were driven by considerations way beyond criminal justice and often at cross purposes to the proclaimed goal of public safety. These destructive changes were born from crisis, one much more severe and protracted than the periodic ups and downs of the business cycles that occur over a roughly 10-year period, but rather a situation that threatened the very survival of the system. Such structural crises occur because capitalism is by its nature unstable. The economy is vast and complicated, but the major decisions are made by a tiny corporate and financial elite, with each thinking only of his own profits. When a structural crisis develops, the long-term institutional arrangements that assured a reliable flow of profits and the rule of capital no longer function. One dramatic example was the Great Depression of the 1930s, followed by World War II. At the end of that period, a new set of international institutions, such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, were created. At the same time, a new deal was hammered out for the terms of the bargain between capital and labor within the U.S. Those arrangements worked well for capital until they broke down a generation later. That new structural crisis, which emerged between 1968 and 73, is the seedbed for the burgeoning of the prison industrial complex and many related changes in U.S. history. The first and most obvious signs were political, as the resistance to imperialism crested in 1968. Abolition now. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And happy Wednesday. It being Wednesday, it's the first hour of our program. Congressman Mark Pocan will be with us in just a second. First, I just wanted to bring you up to date on what's going on. The Senate Judiciary Committee, not the House, but the Senate. The Senate is controlled by Republicans, so the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee is Lindsey Graham, is holding a hearing where they're interrogating the Inspector General for the Department of Justice. He's the guy who did the deep dive into the Republican conspiracy theory that the investigation that led to the Mueller investigation, the investigation of Carter Page, was part of some grand anti-Trump conspiracy, and he concluded, no, it's not. And of course, Bill Barr is saying, well, I don't know if I believe my own people. And Lindsey Graham opened the thing with this insane rant where he read Peter Strzok and Lisa Page's text messages to each other, and then said they, quote, didn't respect their commander-in-chief. These were text messages that they had between each other a year before the election. I mean, it's just like and Graham himself, of course, called Trump, quote, a kook, unfit for office, not qualified to be commander-in-chief. You know, it would make America great again. Tell Donald Trump to go to hell. He's a threat. He's completely unhinged, a racist, a liar, and an opportunist who'd do anything to win. Graham said all those things during that same time period that Page and Strzok were having an affair and talking to each other about how they didn't like Trump, but they didn't. But the Inspector General said that did not contaminate the investigation. So anyhow, now you're completely up to date on the news. Let's go to Congressman Mark Pocan. And by the way, he's with us for the hour. It's Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And so our telephone number, 202-808-9925. Your questions, comments, thoughts for Congressman Pocan are welcome for the next hour. So Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
I'm great. This is, I mean, just political insanity is like reigns. I just got this story that Rudy Giuliani has this new theory that he's going to pump into the Republican bloodstream, that Templeton Investments. I just got this. Templeton Investments, which is a company, you know, like Fidelity. It's a place where you can put your 401k kind of thing. Templeton bought $7 billion worth, or sold $7 billion worth of Ukrainian bonds back in the day. And this was some kind of a illegal theft from Ukraine, is the assertion he's making. There's no evidence to that effect. And this was just a normal thing, you know, these big investment companies buy and sell other countries' bonds. And in his public record filing, Adam Schiff disclosed that he has between $100,000 and $300,000 invested with Templeton funds, probably in Apple stock or something, God only knows. Yeah. But because in his public disclosure, he said he's got his money invested with Templeton, Giuliani and this Ukrainian guy are saying that Schiff was part of some conspiracy to take down Ukraine. I mean, what the hell is going on in Washington, D.C., sir?
You know, among the Republicans, I don't know. You know, I think of, Guyana, where they got in line and drank the Kool-Aid. You know, this clearly has happened in this town. I mean, I can't tell you how many Republican senators have now, spun this Ukrainian theory, which is, obviously utter craziness. No intelligence agency supports it, but they're going to back Donald Trump until the final day that they have to, and when he's not in office. And then I don't know how they rebuild the Republican Party. But right now, it's a cult, and they're going to do what their cult leader says. And no matter how crazy of a scheme they got to put together, that's going to be the position of the modern Republican Party.
Wow. What should we be looking for over the next couple of weeks?
A lot is moving, Tom. And, as you know, that can be dangerous, too, because with stuff moving so fast, you got to watch everything really closely. So impeachment is going to be going before Judiciary Committee tomorrow morning. Tonight, actually, they'll be debating it tomorrow morning for a vote. We'll be doing that in the House next week. We have a big prescription drug bill that the Progressive Caucus had a big impact in making better this week. That'll be coming up for a vote tomorrow. We have possibly a trade agreement looking like next week. We'll be voting on the USMCA with some Democratic negotiated changes. We could have a budget bill, a continuing resolution that we're supposed to have done by September 30th, done by next Friday. And I know I'm forgetting stuff. There's just a lot that's moving right now. And because of that, people got to watch very closely and make sure that they're reaching out to their members of Congress.
This has been an extraordinarily productive session for you guys in the House of Representatives. I mean,
somehow that do-nothing Democrats tag that the president's put out there, I mean, that just shows how ridiculous things are. I mean, prior to this very busy period, we've sent 400 bills to the Senate, 275 of which had bipartisan support. And what's so funny is you may have remembered on USMCA how Republicans kept saying, there's a bill on Nancy's desk that she's not dealing with. There never even has been a bill because there hasn't been a bill to put any agreement forward. But now, thanks to negotiating by Nancy Pelosi and by Democrats, there is a bill. So everything about this period of time, people should watch close. And obviously, what we're hearing out of the Republicans is just trying to divert people from what's actually going on.
Amazing. Okay, let's pick up some phone calls here.
Absolutely.
Congressman Mark Pocan is with us, taking your calls for the hour. I should have mentioned, by the way, at the very top, he is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and he represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin, and in the U.S. House of Representatives. His website is pocan.house.gov, and you can tweet him at Rep Mark Pocan. Lawrence in St. Paul, Minnesota, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan. And thanks for listening to AM 950.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Question for the congressman. Sir, if we have Democrats that do not vote for impeachment in the Senate, how do we punish those Democrats at the polls? And I use that word punish. It's time out for being light-footed. How do we punish Democrats, such as if Doug Jones were to vote, Doug Jones from Alabama, if he were to vote against impeachment, he rode the backs of African-American women. He needs to be punished if he votes against it. So how do we do that, sir? Thank you.
Yeah, Lawrence, I agree. It would be an incredibly foolish thing, I think, for anyone to do that. There was an article that popped up. There's 10 neocons in my Democratic caucus who've put the idea, should we censure instead? And I think it was universally panned as probably the most idiotic idea that came out this month, and I might even give it a little longer period of time, that it's the stupidest thing I've heard of. You know, this is so clear-cut. If you can't handle taking a vote that a president who so clearly violated the law and even given us a confession and evidence towards that, then I think you have an incredibly hard task in convincing constituents they should vote for you. So, you know, I think it is at people's own peril who vote against impeachment because, you know, you're here for one purpose, is to serve the Constitution. The only way you can hold a president accountable, especially with this Department of Justice, is via the impeachment process, and to ignore that is to ignore reality.
Stephen, listening on AM 910 in San Francisco. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on again.
Sure.
The diversion of the flights over there, wouldn't that be just easy to prove? Logs, call logs. These people went over there. They couldn't even afford the meal over there. I mean, in his resort there. What do you think about that?
I'm sorry. So a diversion of
he's talking about Trump apparently ordering the military to stop their planes for refueling at this little tiny airport next door to his hotel in Scotland.
Oh, right. Trust me, Stephen, that's one. I think committees are still going to continue all the oversight they've done on this president, and that I think will go back to the Judiciary Committee, who's been very busy during the articles of impeachment right now. So I think you're going to see more information come out about that, and I do think there's ways that we can find. I don't think you're going to have something as simple as the president himself making that call, but clearly you're going to see it through a chain of command, and that is important information for the American people to see.
Yeah, and who made that decision and why and when?
Yes.
Yeah. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He represents the state of Wisconsin, the 2nd District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Pocan.house.gov is his website, and you can tweet him at Rep Mark Pocan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. Right back with your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. And welcome back. John in Los Angeles, listening on KPFK. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, happy holidays, everybody. I got a real important question. And I used to live here in Milwaukee, and before you represented it, it just went downhill. But now there's a big problem. 750,000 people got kicked off of the SNAP program. You do realize most of them are children, right?
Food stamps.
Right.
I'm not hearing anything about what's going to be done about that, because how can the president unilaterally do that? I thought they had to go through the House and the Senate before he could unilaterally do that.
John, those are all being looked at by Congress from a multitude of levels, from letters to our appropriations bills that hopefully will get done by the end of next week. I think there's a number of vehicles we still have to get around what the president did, but it's not gone unnoticed. Clearly, many of us actually have lived on SNAP for a week to try to highlight cuts going back since I've been here 7 years we've seen to this program. So it just shows the misguided values of this president, and it is not unnoticed.
Kim in Port Huron, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, hello. 2 quick questions, then I'll get off. Barr, does he have access to all 17 intelligence agencies? And if so, could it possibly be used in the 2020 election? It just scares me to think that he has access to
because
so much.
Trump gave him the authority to look at any classified information at any level.
He's the fixer. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the Secretary of Department of Justice has access, just as certain members of Congress do. We have different levels of security clearance, especially if you're on the Intelligence Committee or not. And there's no question Attorney General Barr has not shown himself to be an honest and fair broker. So I'm sure they'll try to manipulate and do a lot of things, and that's where we all have to stand very strong. I think the good news is he handled himself so poorly that I don't think he is considered a fair attorney general, so his word will be somewhat limited. But all the more reason that we have to be active in talking to our friends and family members and neighbors about what's going on. The president's made it very clear. You get information from him and his Twitter account, and a lot of his followers are going to follow it that way. We have to be equally effective in getting our messages across.
Congressman, we just have 43 seconds.
Yeah.
One of the hallmarks of an authoritarian state is that the authoritarian in power uses the criminal justice system to attack his political enemies. This is what Trump is accusing Obama of having done to Trump.
Right.
And the IG report said, no, that didn't happen. Are you concerned that Trump may be doing that himself or may contemplate doing that himself, particularly given how Mr. Barr has been behaving?
Well, I think what they're doing right now, Tom, my best opinion is they're trying to muddle the issue completely with impeachment and other things going on. This is giving, and all the Republicans are very complicit right now in repeating their talking points. Whether he takes it another step farther, I would hope that there's some safeguards in place that can't happen. But obviously with this president, I don't know if he knows where those standards are, so we have to watch it.
Yeah, amen. I'm just concerned that even just that he's normalizing it, that it's incredible. Anyhow,
Yeah.
Congressman Pocan, we'll be right back with more calls for you in just a moment. It's 20 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. Michael in Denver, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for getting the word out. My question, very simply, is: are we facing another government shutdown? I'm out here in Colorado. We have a lot of military. We have a lot, like all states. We have a lot of federal institutions out here. What is the feeling in Congress? Will Donald Trump just by fiat say, no, we're going to shut down the government because I don't like the way Congress is appropriating money, and I in essence, to just basically take away the right of Congress to appropriate our taxes to go to what we need in this country to be done. That's my question. Thank you very much for everything you're doing, Congressman, and Tom, obviously for you every single day.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, I don't see that as an option. Right now, everything we get, there is serious efforts. We're still apart on a number of topics, but there's serious efforts to move it forward. And I just saw something this morning saying if they really can't, they'll likely be looking at a CR through February and have it some additional time. We would love to have it done, though, by next Friday, and we had a report from the appropriations chair this morning to that effect. I've talked to the leader about this, but nothing has given us fear right now from their rhetoric that there would be a shutdown.
Carol in Bowling Green, Kentucky, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hey, I think you're great. You do a priceless service for our country, and when Bernie becomes president, I hope he gives you a medal. My question to the congressman is this prescription bill that is up. I heard that there was a clause in there that it's only restricted to 25 medicines, and that we can no longer negotiate drugs for 10 years, which would mean that if we ever did, Bernie got in, we got Medicare for all, we're stuck. We can't negotiate medicine for 10 years, except for these 25 that are on this bill, and that's it.
Yeah, no, that's not all correct, Carol. In fact, we just made some changes yesterday in the bill, in the Rules Committee, that the Progressive Caucus have been pushing for. So a list of 250 drugs gets submitted. Originally, the language was that 25 at minimum per year would have to be addressed. Unfortunately, the floor looked like the ceiling, and they would only get to 25 of those drugs a year. We just doubled that. That was a Progressive Caucus ask, and we had folks lined up to potentially vote against the rule if we couldn't get there, because we've had a tough time having them up that number. So that's double the number of drugs available. So that means in a 5-year period, that list will be done, and they'll have another list, and they'll keep working off of the most expensive drugs. We did want to have a broader provision that would open up more drugs. We couldn't get that done for non-interference clauses, what it was referred to as, for some other reasons. But this bill would have to be passed by us, which it will, some form passed by the Senate, which probably won't do anything because the pharmaceutical industry, a conference committee would have to come, and you still can't bind anyone by that law because you could change the law. So there never would be a permanent binding that would stop someone from doing something. The bill is better. We kept a provision that Representative Jayapal, my co-chair in the Progressive Caucus, had to make sure savings were shared in some additional ways. But it's a pretty comprehensive bill in that everyone will have savings. I wish it was more robust, but at 50 drugs, at least we've doubled what the floor will be looked at, and that means more people will get more relief should it ever become law. But I think that's still a bit of a stretch given where this Senate is.
Brenda in Flint, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good afternoon. My question is why the Democrats did not have the whistleblower testify, because I think he would have been, I don't know, I think maybe we would have gotten more Democrats, Republicans, and independents backing this impeachment process. And do you think it could be Dan Coates?
Yeah, I don't know who the whistleblower is. I think part of the concern was for the safety of the person when the president said their acts were treasonous. Treason is punishable by death. And quite honestly, you didn't need it. Whistleblower said they heard about this. We have people directly telling us their actions were for months to enact that policy of telling them they wouldn't get aid or a photo with the president until they launched this investigation. So you wouldn't have gotten anything more to convince people. This was just the trigger that made people look at something. And since then, Trump's own political appointees, longtime State Department professionals have all told us way more than we ever got from that whistleblower. So I don't feel like there have been any additional gain whatsoever. And this way we've protected someone when the president tried to scare them by essentially, you could argue, threatening their lives.
Mike in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. I was wondering if there were any plans to deal with the Republican congressmen with some of their actions that they've done in regards specifically to that are related to the articles of impeachment, such as David Nunes, who apparently was dealing with individuals with Ukraine, and if there's like censoring them or taking them out of their committees or impeaching them or anything like that.
Yeah, I couldn't say offhand. I mean, right now we're dealing with the impeachment on what happened. I do think that there'll probably be more investigations, including some of those aspects, because clearly Devin Nunes, if you say anything about him, he's going to sue you, right? He sues, fake Twitter accounts right now.
He's suing a fake cow.
Yeah, he's suing a fake cow. I mean, he has become kind of a cartoon of what a bad member of Congress is. And I don't know if I'm too worried about that, other than making sure that if he was part of this, we need to know that, and the committee, I think, will keep looking at that. But right now, I think everyone is focused, pretty much laser focused on these 2 articles of impeachment and moving forward with this in the next week.
It's coming up on 27 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. We are, for this hour, it's Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the big cheese in the progressive world in Congress. And he also represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. His website is pocan.house.gov. His Twitter handle is @RepMarkPocan. And we'll be right back with more of your calls for him.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's Congressman Mark Pocan's Middays with Mark, the guy from the Cheese State, in fact. We'll be right back. So yesterday I was talking about how, it's the holiday season and how good it feels to give things to other people. It actually generally feels better to give than to get for most people. Maybe that's the difference between us and the billionaire class. I don't know. But although there's some good billionaires out there who give a lot too. So I think it's a universal human thing. And I mentioned that, and Lydia and Christy, who are in the development department over at Free Speech TV, Lydia sent me a note saying that Joanne in California had called in a donation in memory of Lil from Omaha and Phil from Kansas City. And that got us brainstorming about being able to give gifts in other people's names, and Lydia's working it out. It's going to take a couple days, but they're going to design a basic card that they can send to you if you want to give a gift in somebody else's name. And then you can fill the card out and say, Dear George, I just, made a donation in your name to Free Speech TV. But the card will, imply that or suggest that. And so if you would like to give a gift, including a holiday gift, to somebody, or excuse me, if you'd like to give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody's name, they're now organized to do that. So you can call 877-378-8669 right now and give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody else's name, and then send that person a card basically saying, hey, here's your holiday gift, or here's your birthday gift, or this is something that can be done year round. And this is something Free Speech TV will be doing going forward. And not just for this program, for all programs, presumably. I'm pretty sure. So, that's kind of a cool thing. And, I hope it'll encourage you, if you haven't given a gift yet to Free Speech TV, or if you already have, but you've also been thinking, what am I going to get for, Aunt Maud? And, I can send $20 in the name of Free Speech TV, or to Free Speech TV in Aunt Maud's name, and won't that be nice? So there's that. And that, by the way, doesn't mean that you can't also get, one of the premiums from Free Speech TV. For example, with a $20 gift, you get the sticker that says Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken. With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says Nobody's above the law. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month too, you get the T-shirt, Never Again Is Now. With a $240 gift, which can be $20 a month for a year, you get the online after class with Professor Thom. That's meeting and talking about all whatever's going on. Oh, also with a $120 gift, we've got my new book, and this is like nobody else can get this way, right? When a publisher ships out books to Amazon or bookstores or whatever, they say, okay, we're shipping this book in, say, January 15th. Everybody has it by January 20th, but you cannot release this until February 5th or whatever the release date is. It's sometime in February. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. But in the case of Free Speech TV sending out books, they will get them at the same time all these other people do, but they will be putting in these little book plates that I'm going through and signing every morning for 15, 20 minutes. We got a big stack of them. And with my autograph in the front of the book. So you'll get an autographed copy probably before most other people get them in the bookstore or even from Amazon, of my newest book, the Hidden History of the War on Voting. It's actually the hidden history of the Republican war on voting, because the Democrats have always been in favor of voting, but as the book makes clear, I think you'll find it fascinating and infuriating and, great gift and everything else, although just, advance notice. It won't be coming until February. But that's also available with a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year. So then the $240 is our online class, our Zoom conference. The $360 gift at $30 a month for a year is the Study Up with Professor Tom book package. It's the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the Supreme Court and its betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, Hunter in a Farmer's World. This book is creating quite a stir in the psychiatric and psychological community. I think you'll find it fascinating. And especially if you know anybody who has ADHD or who has a kid with ADHD or whatever, this is the Bible. This is the book. And that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street and have lunch at a nearby restaurant overlooking an absolutely beautiful scenic view, and we'll have a good time. I really enjoy that. I look forward to when people come to visit. In fact, we all do. And you'll meet Sean, and you'll meet Nate, and you'll meet Joyce, and possibly Lisa or Louise. We'll see. But in any case, come and hang out with us. So call now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Cargill is the director of the International Center for the Rights of Nature, and she joins me to talk about nature's rights. Other topics include, is obesity causing brain damage in children, and how atmospheric rivers fuel extreme floods in America. You can find The Science Revolution where all fine podcasts are available. 34 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. It's Middays with Congressman Mark Pocan, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Talk Caucus, taking your calls for the hour. Don in Watertown, South Dakota. Don, thanks for listening to Sirius XM. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, gentlemen. I got a short question. Is there any way to investigate, arrest, and prosecute Bill Barr, or is impeachment our only alternative?
Yeah, Don, I couldn't tell you offhand. I don't know if there's anything you can point to that he specifically broke the law without going into some sort of investigation. Even then, I'm not sure about the breaking law part. So I don't have a great answer for you on that. I'm sorry.
Steve in Zimmerman, Minnesota. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Wow, talk about stealing my thunder. Hi, Tom, Mark. I was going to ask is this, Bill Barr lied to us about Iran-Contra. He lied to us about Manuel Noriega kidnapping plot. He lied to us about the Mueller report. And now he's lied to us about the IG report. Can the American Bar Association do anything to him?
Yeah, I don't know on the Barr side. I mean, I think he's already done the damage to himself. I mean, I agree with you on the Mueller report. I don't think we could go back to some of the things he did in previous administrations very easily. But, when he said what he represented the summary of the report different than the report, that, I think, inked his reputation as an attorney general. And now this newest one, again, is ridiculous, fighting the inspector general. And you're going to see that flush out in the Senate. So maybe there's some ways that Democratic senators can try to highlight it. But in the House, we're going to be focused on the impeachment right now. After that, the committees will go back to everything from emoluments clause to other issues, and I assume Attorney General Barr will be part of some of those discussions.
Jack in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you very much. I have a short question. I was glued to all of the hearings, And when I heard Castor, the Republican attorney, as a witness on Monday, he committed perjury. And it's been reported that he committed perjury. Shouldn't he be put under, legal whatever for perjury?
Yeah, I haven't seen that. This has been one of the busiest weeks. I forgot to mention the NDAA reauthorization we have before us, too. That's part of what's coming up. So I don't know. I haven't seen the accounts of that, so I really can't give you a concrete answer. I'm sorry.
The NDAA is the military appropriation, right?
Yeah, which, while there's a couple good things in there, like paid parental leave for federal employees, which is a huge win, there's also things like money for the Space Force and for 90 F-35s, and all of our language that we had around Yemen is gone, and on stopping arms sales to Saudi Arabia is gone. A lot of other progressive priorities that we got through the House bill are gone. So, I didn't support it the first time. I think we've increased defense spending 20% just in the last 3 years at a time of peace. It's way out of control. But that is another bill that's going to be coming before Congress this week.
Yeah, just for reference, the Department of Defense's budget for the year 2000 was $384 billion. This proposed bill is $738 billion. Yeah. That's a bit of a change. Yeah. Corky in Rochester, New York. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Congressman. Can't you get his tax returns? Because I'm sure he's so in debt to Russia that he gives them everything they want. They got so much on him that he is really indebted. And Putin's got him by the short hairs.
Yeah, Corky, we're in court on that, and New York is also going after that. So there's no question we agree with you. I think there's a lot you can learn out of those tax returns, and we're going to continue fighting to get them. It's just that now we're in a legal process, which is not going to be a very quick process.
Chuck in Hood River, Oregon. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hi, guys. I'm just wondering that if possibly there might be a chance to write in the articles a possibility of no contest. When you refuse to go in front of a judge or something or whatever, or, they'll work out a plea for you for no contest. And so he's pleading guilty with no contest. Maybe that could be worked into either article or both articles so that, one of them might grab him.
Yeah, Chuck, I don't think so. One thing I've learned in my limited time experiencing Donald Trump is he lives in a different orbit than we do inside his head. And I think in many ways he doesn't think he did something wrong because he thinks he is above the law when clearly he's broken the law. So I don't think he's going to necessarily go for something admitting any guilt through this process. So I don't think that'll be an option. By the way, Chuck, Hood River, Oregon is one of, I think, the most beautiful places I've been to in the country. So beautiful views, and I enjoy visiting there.
Hey, the next time you get out here, let us know.
I know, Tom. I would. I have family out that way, and I'm long overdue.
Yeah, great. Mike in Lakeside, Washington. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. That's Lakewood.
Lakewood. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No problem. Gentlemen, I've heard mentioned on this program a number of times, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a movement to pass a constitutional amendment to the effect that, money is not speech and corporations are not people. And I'm wondering what, if anything, is going on in Congress to circulate this and buttonhole people and, get it moving.
Yeah, this is the Move to Amend process. So there are Move to Amend groups around the country. They've been doing localized referendums that generally get 60, 70, I think even up to 80% of the vote that say those two simple principles. Money is not free speech and corporations are not people. Based on those two very simple principles, you would solve many of our campaign finance issues. There was a constitutional amendment introduced by Rick Nolan in the past. He's not in Congress this session, so I don't know if that's been taken over, Mike, so I'd have to double check. But in the past, I was a sponsor of that resolution, and there were some efforts to try to move that forward. But we're certainly seeing it on the ground in a lot of localities in Wisconsin. We have a very active group, and we've been doing these for years now across the state and communities, and they win big because people are way smarter than politicians.
Yeah, and if I get in the shameless plug department, these two doctrines came about not because any legislature or president thought it was a good idea, but because the Supreme Court basically created law and doctrine out of thin air, something that they're not authorized to do in the U.S. Constitution, which is at the core of my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America. So just FYI, if people want more information on that. Ron in Lake Comanche, California, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Mark.
Hey, Ron.
Thank you for being. Good morning. How are you? I want to thank you and the Democrats for signing a bill 9 years ago called Compassionate Allowances that allowed people that are dying of the big C from having to work till they die. If it wasn't for the Democrats right now, I'd probably go a little insane right now. I've been driving for about 26 years, and the last week I got hit, and I've been hit 11 times. I'm tired. Also, want to throw out an idea about McCarthyism. I'm sure the ghost of McCarthy's up and about talking to the Republicans up and down the halls because there's a plethora of Republicans that are taking money from Russia. This came out this morning.
I haven't seen that, Ron. I'll have to look for that article, but I have not seen anything about money from Russians going to Republicans.
Brad in Elk Grove, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Congressman Pocan, I am befuddled by the complete absence from the Democrats of pointing out the Republicans' hypocrisy in the impeachment process by complaining about a process apparently they approved in 2015, and I'll take my comment off air.
Yeah, Brad, I've seen that a whole bunch. That's been brought up. Whether or not mainstream media picks it up is another thing, because you're right. If the Republicans' only argument is around process, although some of the process is the specific rules they set up for the impeachment hearings and some of the findings around it. But you're right. We've been working off of basis in many cases of rules that they put in place when they took the majority.
It's coming up on 45 minutes past the hour, or 44 minutes past the hour right now. We're talking with Congressman Mark Pocan. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. Congressman Pocan is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. His website, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan, and he often tweets back. So check it out. And we'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Middays with Mark with the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congressman Mark Pocan. And welcome back. Barbara, listening on KPFK in Gardena, California. Am I saying that right, Barbara?
Yes, you're saying it right.
You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Congressman Pocan, I would have been more satisfied with Donald Trump had he not given the Ukrainians 25 cents. They were not our allies until we overthrew their government. And now that they are our allies, and we are sending in this $430 million, I want to know why we are supporting them in shooting their own people in an area like Donbass.
Yeah, Barbara, so I don't know if I have a good answer for you, other than they are technically in an... and I'm trying to find the right word, in a conflict with Russia, and therefore, as our allies, and they are allies right now, we've provided assistance to them. So I don't know if I have a better answer for you than that.
Abby in La Crosse, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. I'm going to go up to 50,000 feet and take a big picture question here. Given that I've been frustrated by corporate consolidation, and given that it's better to have 1,000 corporations each making $1 million than to have one corporation making $1 billion, how do we fix that? What do you broadly in principle, I know the devil's in the details, but broadly in principle, how do you feel about the idea of a progressive tax rate for corporations, similar to what it is for individuals? In other words, a big corporation pays a higher percentage in taxes.
Yeah, I think part of it, Avi, if I can take it the slightly different direction, and I'm not trying to not answer your question, but to me, part of the problem with those really big corporations often falls into things that I would call antitrust, where we have consolidation in industries. For example, the airlines. You have 3 big airlines, maybe 4, you could argue, at best in the country. The reason United could pull that one person off the plane when they oversold tickets is because where else are you going to go? Generally, through your local airport, you have one dominant airline, and then you have a few other options. And we see this in too many industries, and I think in the case of Amazon, too, they've gotten so big, at some point, you got to take a look at, are they too big for what's good? So I don't know if it's so much on having a progressive corporate tax. I'd have to think about that, how that would work. But certainly we should have more laws in effect that don't allow this consolidation of only a few people. This goes back to actually the Bill Clinton days, and it's unfortunately devolved to a very bad place we're at today. We do have a a caucus dealing with antitrust law. There is a subcommittee on judiciary trying to deal with it that David Cicilline from Rhode Island is dealing with. But to me, that might be the best way to address some of the bad consumerism we have and the obscene profits of many of the corporations. I think that is one area we could have a big impact on.
I just finished writing the book that will be out in the fall of next year. It's The Hidden History of Monopoly, and discovered that our current anti-monopoly laws really were completely changed by Robert Bork. He was the guy who crusaded for basically price being the only thing that should be considered in the law. Reagan picked that up and ran with it, and then the Supreme Court ruled on that in GTE Sylvania in the late 70s, as I recall. So
we're paying a big price for it right now.
Oh yeah, and it all goes back to Robert Bork, and he got this from a guy at the Chicago School of Economics by the name of Professor Doctor. It's a very weird story, but anyhow, I just wrote a book about it. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. Welcome back. We're the last 10 minutes here of Middays with Mark, Congressman Mark Pocan, taking your calls. Chris in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Congressman. I'm a Democrat, a very liberal Democrat, and I'm also an attorney. And I've been very concerned about the way the Democrats have been approaching this impeachment, in that they're giving subpoenas for documents and for people that are not being complied with, but they're not following through with having the courts enforce them. And I understand the language about it takes the courts forever, but I also understand that the courts expedite cases in matters of emergency, and I think we could get a ruling from the Supreme Court within 3 months on these subpoenas, and I don't understand why the House won't do that because I think we'd have a lot more evidence, a lot more testimony to change the opinion of the American public that, yes, he really did do something wrong. I mean, if you watch Fox for 20 minutes, you can see they're in an alternative world there, and they're just not getting it. And I think if they got some of these other people testifying, I think the other Republicans that are refusing to testify now, I think they'd be concerned that they may be charged with perjury if they perjure themselves, but they may actually give truthful testimony. And I think the volumes of documents you could get would show it anyway, even if they wouldn't be truthful or if they refuse to testify by pleading the fifth.
Yeah, Chris, I think it's a very fair question. I can't speak directly for the committees that are doing this, what the thought process is, and I'm sure they've had quite a thought process. I would say, one, I think the feeling is that we already have abundant information that I don't think Fox News, even if Julie Giuliani said, yep, I did it, we planned this thing from the beginning, Fox would cover it some other way, right? I don't think that would really change that. And plus, I don't think Rudy Giuliani and some of these others would still be compliant witnesses. And I'm not sure you could still get it done in 3 months. And I think that's the real concern that I've heard from the House lawyers about how quickly you could actually get this done. I do feel that they think having Republican appointees, including Ambassador Sondland, who gave $1 million to the Trump inaugural, having State Department professionals that have no political affiliation or interest in this, all saying that this has been months of activity. It's not a single phone call. I don't know how much more information you could get about what the president did besides his own notes from his transcript and the words of all those individuals. So I think that's why they decided to move forward. But I do think we are in a polarized place that I don't think you'd see the swings in public opinion like you did in the Nixon era, because we just don't see those swings anymore. And I think that's why we're moving now. And I can't say if they won't try to in the future enforce subpoenas, but I think that legal process is still longer than most people wanted to take the risk on.
Darlene in Atlanta, Georgia. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you. My question is, Mitch McConnell seems to be putting a lot of federal justices out, and I just want to know, what are we doing to combat some of that, and what is the long-term effect? How is that going to affect the country overall?
Yeah, Darlene, you've pointed out one of the, I think, the biggest problems we've had this year. The Senate has done almost nothing legislatively. I think they had passed 60 bills by the August break. They still are the ones that are holding us up on getting our annual budget done that was due September 30th. But they have sure approved an awful lot of conservative judges, and they are having a major imprint on that. And we don't have, unfortunately, a lot of great ways to have a recourse on that other than to realize that elections have consequences. And unfortunately, they've been very effective in taking care of that one aspect of the Senate's job, definitely with an eye towards having an impact on another legislative branch. So we have to make sure everyone realizes that as much as even if we win the White House and the Senate, we may have now problems for years on the judiciary because of the action's happening now. So I think I wish I could point out a better thing that the Senate could have done that they're not doing. I think, unfortunately, our situation is we have to win in November in order to try to not only stop what they've been doing this year, but also get back to putting people who actually respect the law first and foremost.
Jim in Patchogue, New York. Correct me if I'm wrong in the pronunciation there, Jim. You're on the air with Congressman.
You finally got it right, Tom.
Okay.
Thanks. I have nothing against the Ukrainian people except my mother-in-law who speaks fluent Ukrainian. But other than that, I wanted to ask you about those congressmen that broke into the basement of the Intelligence Committee hearings. Are there going to be any accountability for those fellows?
Yeah, Jim,
I'm in the first district here of New York, where one of those congressmen, their representative, was one of the culprits.
Yeah, Jim, my guess is no. I don't think there'll be additional actions against them. It was unfortunate antics, and unfortunately, they broke the law. You can't bring phones into skiffs and a lot of other things. But my guess is the recourse you have as a constituent is the strongest recourse that can happen. Send someone packing. Don't send them back to Washington. Do the best you can to make sure that they have lots of time on their hand to pensively think about their actions and take care of that in November.
Ramon in San Francisco. We have 60 seconds left, Ramon. Real quick question.
Yes, Congressman, I remember that the National Rifle Association received about $30 million for the Republican campaign for Donald Trump through Maria Butina. And Paul Ryan quit it right away after all this investigation started to come about. Do you have anything to tell us about that? Because Paul Ryan had a good...
Okay, we got to stop there. Any questions or any investigations into Russia and the NRA?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you, because, again, my committee's appropriations, and many committees are doing many things. There's 21 standing committees. Not that I know of offhand, but clearly I know that there have been a number of journalists who've written stuff about the connection between the money and the NRA. I shouldn't say that. I think the one committee might be taking this up, but it has been well reported, and Ramon, you're right. I think people need to keep looking, especially at the Russian money that came into the NRA at election time.
Remarkable stuff. Thanks so much for being with us today, Congressman, and for showing up every week
absolutely.
for these. It's great talking.
Thank you, Tom. It's a busy couple weeks here, so
it is.
Keep diligent telling everyone.
Okay, you got it. Congressman Mark Pocan, pocan.house.gov, and you can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. We will be back in just a moment. I want to talk about the Pentagon and the defense budget right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
So yesterday I was talking about how, it's the holiday season and how good it feels to give things to other people. It actually generally feels better to give than to get for most people. Maybe that's the difference between us and the billionaire class. I don't know. But although there's some good billionaires out there who give a lot too. So I think it's a universal human thing. And I mentioned that, and Lydia and Christy, who are in the development department over at Free Speech TV, Lydia sent me a note saying that Joanne in California had called in a donation in memory of Lil from Omaha and Phil from Kansas City. And that got us brainstorming about being able to give gifts in other people's names, and Lydia's working it out. It's going to take a couple days, but they're going to design a basic card that they can send to you if you want to give a gift in somebody else's name. And then you can fill the card out and say, Dear George, I just, made a donation in your name to Free Speech TV. But the card will, imply that or suggest that. And so if you would like to give a gift, including a holiday gift, to somebody, or excuse me, if you'd like to give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody's name, they're now organized to do that. So you can call 877-378-8669 right now and give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody else's name, and then send that person a card basically saying, hey, here's your holiday gift, or here's your birthday gift, or here, this is something that can be done year round. And this is something Free Speech TV will be doing going forward. And not just for this program, for all programs, presumably. I'm pretty sure. So, that's kind of a cool thing. And, I hope it'll encourage you, if you haven't given a gift yet to Free Speech TV, or if you already have, but you've also been thinking, what am I going to get for, Aunt Maud? And, I can send $20 in the name of Free Speech TV, or to Free Speech TV in Aunt Maud's name, and won't that be nice? So there's that. And that, by the way, doesn't mean that you can't also get, one of the premiums from Free Speech TV. For example, with a $20 gift, you get the sticker that says "Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken." With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says "Nobody's above the law." With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month too, you get the T-shirt "Never Again Is Now." With a $240 gift, which can be $20 a month for a year, you get the online after class with Professor Thom. That's meeting and talking about whatever's going on. Oh, also with a $120 gift, we've got my new book, and this is like nobody else can get this way, right? When a publisher ships out books to Amazon or bookstores or whatever, they say, okay, we're shipping this book in, say, January 15th. Everybody has it by January 20th, but you cannot release this until February 5th or whatever the release date is. It's sometime in February. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. But in the case of Free Speech TV sending out books, they will get them at the same time all these other people do, but they will be putting in these little book plates that I'm going through and signing every morning for 15, 20 minutes. We got a big stack of them. And with my autograph in the front of the book. So you'll get an autographed copy probably before most other people get them in the bookstore or even from Amazon, of my newest book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. It's actually the hidden history of the Republican war on voting, because the Democrats have always been in favor of voting, but as the book makes clear, I think you'll find it fascinating and infuriating and, great gift and everything else, although just, advance notice. It won't be coming until February. But that's also available with a $120 gift or $10 a month for a year. So then the $240 is our online class, our Zoom conference. The $360 gift at $30 a month for a year is the Study Up with Professor Thom book package. It's the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the Supreme Court and its betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, Hunter and a Farmer's World. This book is creating quite a stir in the psychiatric and psychological community. I think you'll find it fascinating. And especially if you know anybody who has ADHD or who has a kid with ADHD or whatever, this is the Bible. This is the book, and that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street and have lunch at a nearby restaurant overlooking an absolutely beautiful scenic view, and we'll have a good time. I really enjoy that. I look forward to when people come to visit. And in fact, we all do. And you'll meet Sean, and you'll meet Nate, and you'll meet Joyce, and possibly Lisa or Louise. We'll see. But in any case, come and hang out with us. So call now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. I wanted to talk about the Congressman Pocan in the last hour mentioned the NDAA, or whatever it's called, it's National Defense Authorization Act. Thank you, Nate. And there's a history to that most people don't know. And I just wanted to share it very quickly with you and then talk about why I think that this is a big deal and a reflection of our national priorities. And he was lamenting the fact that most of the progressive changes that were put into the bill in the House of Representatives, including cutting off money to Saudi Arabia for their genocidal war in Yemen and things like that, had been taken out by Republicans in the Senate. The background of this goes back to the founding of our republic. There was a big debate in the Constitutional Convention about whether Congress should authorize, or whether the Constitution should authorize the nation to have a single military, an army, basically, a national army. There was a consensus that we needed a navy, we needed to protect our shores, we needed to protect shipping, commerce, things like that. But what about an army? And the concern was that armies during times of peace very often turn their attention to taking over governments, to corrupting governments, or even overthrowing governments. The military coups, the corruption of governments by the military were, even in 1787, legendary. And, just built into the woof and warp or warp and weave, I guess is whatever the phrase is, of European history. And you had a few people who were saying, yeah, no problem, let's have a military, or let's have an army, a standing army, throughout time. And then you had the majority of the people who were writing the Constitution, and some people on the outside. Jefferson was in Paris at the time, and he was writing nasty grams, letters to the guys writing the Constitution, saying, no, you want to ban the army during time of peace. And instead have each state have a militia, what we call the National Guard today, have each state have a militia and have the federal government have the power to call up that militia. And in fact, that's, one of the powers that is actually, put into the Constitution, is that, Congress has the power to call up the militia. But it goes beyond that. It's, in fact, this is, Article 1, Section 8, Part 16, he has the Congress shall have the power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. But what precedes that is Section 12. This is Section 8, Paragraph 12, or Sentence 12, whatever. That Congress shall have the right for taxation and things like that, quote, to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. Now, this is the only place in the entire Constitution where Congress's ability to appropriate money through taxation and spend that money is limited in time. Congress can appropriate and spend money, in perpetuity on maintaining national parks, or on maintaining the Navy, or on you fill in the blanks, right? Pretty much anything that they want to do. Congress can do that forever. But the only place in the Constitution where it says Congress can only spend money for a 2-year period is in Article 1, Section 8 with regard to the Army. And the reason why is because they wanted Congress every 2 years to be forced to have a debate about whether the military had gotten too strong, too big, too powerful, had too much influence on our political systems, represented a threat to our republic. And that debate is not happening anymore. Dwight Eisenhower, when he left office, said we need to be concerned about the influence of the military-industrial complex. And he was very specific about it. In fact, he said this not only threatened our nation, it threatened the spiritual basis of our nation as well as everything else. I mean, it was he was very outspoken about it. So now what we are seeing right now is that the Department of Defense's budget for the year 2000, the last year of the Clinton administration, the year of the election, when George Bush stole the election in Florida, the military defense budget for that year was $384 billion. So just hold on to that number in your mind, less than $400 billion. And it was a pretty high amount. It was substantial. And then came George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, who lied us into 2 wars. They told us that we had to invade Afghanistan when, in fact, Mullah Omar, the head of the Taliban, the leader of Afghanistan, had said, you know, if Osama bin Laden is responsible for 9/11, if you can provide any evidence to the world to that effect, we will arrest him and turn him over to a third country for prosecution. Afghanistan was the second poorest country in the world. Burkina Faso was the poorest. Number 2 was Afghanistan. Their annual GDP was only $2 billion. But George W. Bush wanted a war. He had made that very clear back in 1998 when he was being interviewed by Mickey Herskowitz, who was the biographer, the writer that his father and mother hired to ghostwrite his autobiography, A Charge to Keep. And ultimately, another writer finished the job because Bush wasn't happy with Herskowitz. But Herskowitz had over 100 hours of recorded conversations with George W. Bush. And Cindy Sheehan laid this right out. Sean, if you can open the 360. This is Cindy Sheehan testifying before Congress, before John Connors' commission. Here's what she had to say.
As a matter of fact, in interviews in 1999 with respected journalists and longtime Bush family friend Mickey Herskowitz, then Governor George Bush stated, "One of the keys to being seen as a great leader is to be seen as commander-in-chief. My father had all this political capital built up when he drove the Iraqis out of Kuwait, and he wasted it. If I have a chance to invade, if I had that much capital, I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to get everything passed that I want to get passed, and I'm going to have a successful presidency," end quote.
And there you go. I mean, you know, it doesn't get clearer than that. And, you know, and as I said, you know, Dwight Eisenhower warned us about this. He was quite explicit about it. In fact, I think if you can bring up my computer, Sean, I think this is the point where he says it.
As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow.
So we're spending $700 billion for defense, and we can't fund food stamps. Eisenhower continues.
During the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever-growing...
Excuse me, this is the wrong place. Here it is right here.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
Now, I would say that we are, right now, at that point that Dwight Eisenhower was talking about. And frankly, I think we've been there for several decades. And whenever, I mean, you know, you come forward and say, hey, let's wipe out student debt. And the Republicans go, how are you going to pay for it? Let's give everybody health care. How are you going to pay for it? Let's wipe out. I mean, Betsy DeVos won't even wipe out student debt for kids who got ripped off by for-profit colleges that were clearly fraudulent. And I mean, this is they were talking about this morning on NPR. This is crazy. Why? Well, we can't afford to pay for it. Donald Trump just threw $750 just in time for Christmas. Just threw $750,000 off people off food stamps. That was less than $1 billion. Why? Well, we can't afford to pay for it. And now the military is coming and saying, we want $738 billion. And Trump is planning on giving them actually more than they're asking for. The concerns of our founders were justified. Dwight Eisenhower, the last honestly elected Republican president, the last Republican to be elected without fraud or treason, Dwight Eisenhower laid out why we should be concerned about it. And I'm telling you, this NDAA is going to be coming up here in the next week or so. And as I said, it originally had a bunch of progressive stuff in it. And Congressman Pocan just told us that's all been stripped out by the Senate. And it might be worth a phone call to your members of Congress if you share my concerns that we are just wasting our money with the military, or at least some of our money with the military. I'm not saying we don't need a military. And in the process, ignoring our people. And I want to talk about that some more with Dwight. Hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
With President Franklin Roosevelt's speech from 75 years ago, right after the break. Stick around. And welcome back. Lou in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Lou, what's up?
Tom, hi. Thanks for talking to me.
Lou, you need to get your mouth closer to the microphone. Sounds like you're talking to us from the bathroom.
How's this?
That's no good either. Lou, I'm going to put you on hold. We don't like to have people on who are on speakerphones. You can work it out with Joyce. Lowell in Salem, Oregon. Hey, Lowell, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to bring up the bill. There's an automatic austerity bill, Senate Bill 2765, and a number of Democrats signed on to that. So I'm trying to figure out what the strategy is, and it seems to be, to block progressive change later.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, Lowell, so I can't offer you an opinion. I'm sorry. Give me the bill number again, and I'll look it up after we get off the air.
Sure. Senate 2765.
2765. Okay. I'll check it out and get back with you, as they say. Thanks a lot for the call.
Thanks.
Good talking to you. Steve in Conifer, Colorado, watching Free Speech TV. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
As I told Joyce, I wanted to talk to you about your move to the center, along with Stephanie Miller's and Randy Rhodes. I guess it's my impression that you all believe in the Russiagate conspiracy theory is what I would call it. And I haven't seen a lot of you folks bring on anybody to counter that argument, including Aaron Mate or Max Blumenthal or Abby Martin, your old colleague at
we had Julio Rivera on yesterday saying that this is all a fraud. We've had, but I don't think it's a fraud. And I think that the evidence that was laid out in the Mueller report is pretty clear and pretty explicit, and I would suggest that you read it. Let's see here. We still have a minute and a half. Joanne in Bellhaven, North Carolina. Hey, Joanne, what's up?
Oh, hello, Tom. Thank you so much for taking my call. Sure. I'm a long-time listener and finally got on to ask you a question or to really make a statement and a question.
Okay.
I am so very much concerned about this hearing and how it's going to be perceived as it's in the Senate, how it's going to be perceived to the public. My biggest concern is that the Democrats really need to spend their time holding on to the Senate and holding on to the House and taking the Senate.
Right.
Because in my opinion, that would be Plan B. In my opinion, if they do that and they take the Senate and they hold the House, we will see people running out of there like their pants are on fire. Because that is something.
So how would
I know.
you do it? I mean, what's your suggestion for how we take back the Senate, or is it just?
I think they have to concentrate on that. I think Tom Perez, who is the head of the Democratic Party, he really needs to focus and get together with progressive type Democrats to come up with a plan to work on just that. Working on keeping the House and getting the Senate. They have to do that. And then they're going to have to do massive fundraising and that kind of thing. I think for example, Bloomberg's in the race. Why is he in the race?
Because he can. Because in 1976, the Supreme Court said that if a billionaire wants to fund his own campaign, then there are no campaign rules.
Well, he should then take some of that money and help them.
I agree.
The Democrats win.
I think Tom Steyer should too, and I told him that to his face on this program.
Well, I'm going to call them all, and I'm going to text them, call them, do whatever I can, because I do that anyway, and I'm calling my.
We got to run. Thank you. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. Over at Thom.com. Welcome back. Okay, so I started out by talking about how we're, mentioning our priorities, and then, went into how, the military and the defense industry also. I mean, the defense industry, most defense contractors, most of the very large defense contractors have literally built a factory or a plant, or even in some cases a very small operation, but literally have one in every congressional district in America. So that there is not a single member of Congress who can't be lobbied by their own citizens saying, please save my job at McDonnell Douglas or at Boeing or whatever it may be, right? And what we're spending our money on. Well, back in 1944, 75 years ago, and a tip of the hat to Meteor Blades over at Daily Kos for reminding me of this, Franklin Roosevelt, in his State of the Union address, laid out what he wanted to do after World War II was over. Keep in mind, World War II is raging. And this is what the president says in his State of the Union address. He says, it is our duty now to begin to lay the plans and determine the strategy for the winning of a lasting peace and the establishment of an American standard of living higher than ever before known. We cannot be content, no matter how high that general standard of living may be, if some fraction of our people, whether it's 1/3 or 1/5 or 1/10, is ill-fed, ill-clothed, ill-housed, and insecure. And you recall in his first inauguration, he said 1/3 of America is ill-fed, ill-clothed, ill-housed. He said, we have come to a clear realization of the fact that true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. Necessitous men are not free men. People who are hungry and out of a job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. In our day, these economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. We have accepted, so to speak, a second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station, race, or creed. Among these are the right for a useful and well-paying job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of the nation, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return that will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every business person, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. The right to a good education. All of these rights spell security, and after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. America's own rightful place in the world depends in large part upon how fully we realize these and similar rights have been carried into practice for our citizens. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world. And then he wraps it up by saying, if history were to repeat itself and we were to return to the so-called normalcy of the 1920s, then it is certain that even though we shall have conquered our enemies on the battlefields abroad, we shall have yielded to the spirit of fascism here at home. The 1920s, of course, Republican governance. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back with your calls just after this. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. So yesterday I was talking about how, it's the holiday season and how good it feels to give things to other people. It actually generally feels better to give than to get for most people. Maybe that's the difference between us and the billionaire class. I don't know. But although there's some good billionaires out there who give a lot too. So I think it's a universal human thing. And I mentioned that, and Lydia and Christy, who are in the development department over at Free Speech TV, Lydia sent me a note saying that Joanne in California had called in a donation in memory of Lil from Omaha and Phil from Kansas City. And that got us brainstorming about being able to give gifts in other people's names, and Lydia's working it out. It's going to take a couple days, but they're going to design a basic card that they can send to you if you want to give a gift in somebody else's name. And then you can fill the card out and say, Dear George, I just, made a donation in your name to Free Speech TV. But the card will, imply that or suggest that. And so if you would like to give a gift, including a holiday gift, to somebody, or excuse me, if you'd like to give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody's name, they're now organized to do that. So you can call 877-378-8669 right now and give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody else's name, and then send that person a card basically saying, hey, here's your holiday gift, or here's your birthday gift, or here, this is something that can be done year round. And this is something Free Speech TV will be doing going forward. And not just for this program, for all programs, presumably. I'm pretty sure. So, that's kind of a cool thing. And, I hope it'll encourage you, if you haven't given a gift yet to Free Speech TV, or if you already have, but you've also been thinking, what am I going to get for, Aunt Maud? And, I can send $20 in the name of Free Speech TV, or to Free Speech TV in Aunt Maud's name, and won't that be nice? So there's that. And that, by the way, doesn't mean that you can't also get, one of the premiums from Free Speech TV. For example, with a $20 gift, you get the sticker that says Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken. With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says Nobody's above the law. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month too, you get the t-shirt, Never Again Is Now. With a $240 gift, which can be $20 a month for a year, you get the online after class with Professor Tom. That's meeting and talking about all, whatever's going on. Oh, also with a $120 gift, we've got my new book, and this is like nobody else can get this way, right? When a publisher ships out books to Amazon or bookstores or whatever, they say, okay, we're shipping this book in, say, January 15th. Everybody has it by January 20th, but you cannot release this until February 5th or whatever the release date is. It's sometime in February. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. But in the case of Free Speech TV sending out books, they will get them at the same time all these other people do, but they will be putting in these little book plates that I'm going through and signing every morning for 15, 20 minutes. We got a big stack of them. And with my autograph in the front of the book. So you'll get an autographed copy probably before most other people get them in the bookstore or even from Amazon, of my newest book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. It's actually the hidden history of the Republican war on voting, because the Democrats have always been in favor of voting, but as the book makes clear, I think you'll find it fascinating and infuriating and, a great gift and everything else, although just, advance notice. It won't be coming until February. But that's also available with a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year. So then the $240 is our online class, our Zoom conference. The $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, is the Study Up with Professor Tom book package. It's the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the Supreme Court and its betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, Hunter in a Farmer's World. This book is creating quite a stir in the psychiatric and psychological community. I think you'll find it fascinating. And especially if you know anybody who has ADHD or who has a kid with ADHD or whatever, this is the Bible. This is the book. And that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street and have lunch at a nearby restaurant overlooking an absolutely beautiful scenic view, and we'll have a good time. I really enjoy that. I look forward to when people come to visit. In fact, we all do. And you'll meet Sean, and you'll meet Nate, and you'll meet Joyce, and possibly Lisa or Louise. We'll see. But in any case, come and hang out with us. So call now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. On the Science Revolution podcast this week, can you deny we are now standing in an extinction event and disinformation is one of the causes? Mari Margil is the director of the International Center for the Rights of Nature, and she joins me to talk about nature's rights. Other topics include, is obesity causing brain damage in children? And how atmospheric rivers fuel extreme floods in America. You can find the Science Revolution where all fine podcasts are available. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just a heads up, Congressman Mark Pocan, who more or less every other week drops by and takes your calls. He represents California's 17th District, Silicon Valley, and is the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He's going to moderate a 90-minute fireside chat in Washington, D.C., Friday, December 13th. That's the day after tomorrow. And just FYI, it'll be live streamed on Facebook Live. So I won't be able to watch it because Facebook disabled my personal account. And I wrote an op-ed about that, which is just went up over at slate.com, asking the question, should Facebook has now become such a part, so interpenetrated with our news media and with the way that we communicate with each other and keep in touch with each other, that should it be either A, regulated like, the news media is. You can't have naked lies and distortions and untruths. I guess to some extent the news media is. Look at Fox News. Oh, my God. Should it be regulated, or should it be nationalized? Should the federal government say, okay, Mark, we're going to buy, 50% of your stock, and we're going to run Facebook? Or a third alternative that I laid out in the article, that's over at salon.com right now, as well as it was on alternate yesterday. I'm not sure if it's still up. And LA Progressive and OurRevolution.org and a bunch of other places. A third option that I suggested was that the federal government could actually create a Facebook alternative. And actually, that's kind of an interesting idea. I mean, the technology behind Facebook is not, it was new when it was new, but it's not new anymore. And so anyhow, if you have thoughts on that, let me know. Do you think that Facebook should be regulated? Do you think it should be nationalized? Do you think that we should, the government should be creating a Facebook alternative? Every time there's been a serious competitor to Facebook, Facebook simply buys them. And, that of course is monopolistic behavior and something that shouldn't be allowed, but it has been ever since the Reagan era. And that's a whole separate rant. So anyhow, Jim, and is it Hebron Hills, Illinois, or Hebron?
It's Hebron, Tom.
Hebron, okay. What's up, Jim?
Anyway, thank you for your tireless work for justice. Really appreciate it. You were talking about Eisenhower's farewell address, and in my reading of it, he originally wrote it, his first draft, he wrote it as the military-industrial congressional complex.
That's correct. And he struck out congressional, before he gave the speech.
Right, but so he saw this coming, where the lobbying power, and lobbying is illegal in a lot of countries, but the lobbying power of the Pentagon and the industrial military has taken over. We're his worst fears right now, I think. Anyway, I just want to make that point.
Yeah, well, and it's a very, very good point. And after he said we can't let the military-industrial complex seize this, influence, and then he said, we can't allow our future to be mortgaged. And he was talking about by the expense of the military. There's a little ending to the speech. It's about a minute and a half, and I'm going to play it in just a second, and in which he is saying he's really speaking to the consequences of this. And this is a part of his speech that is generally ignored, but I think it's actually the most important part. So here it is. This is Dwight Eisenhower, President Eisenhower. Whoop. You got to bring it up on my computer, not the 360. There we go. Here we go. This is Dwight Eisenhower.
During the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. Together we must learn how to compose differences, not with arms, but with intellect and decent purpose.
And he talks about, a community of dreadful fear and hate. I mean, what have we not become? Have we not become that under Trump?
May we be ever unswerving in devotion to principle.
This is his closing prayer.
Confident but humble with power. Diligent in pursuit of the nation's great goals. To all the peoples of the world, I once more give expression to America's prayerful and continuing aspiration. We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth.
It's Dwight Eisenhower, it almost brings tears to my eyes. I mean, a Republican president. Can you imagine, Jim?
Yeah. Well, no, I can't. I'm speechless too. But just one last real quick thing. I was at a meeting with Lauren Underwood, our wonderful congressional representative here in Illinois 14th, and we were discussing early childhood education. And it came up, how are we going to pay? How can we afford it? And I said we should. It's the wrong question. It should be, how can we afford not to do it and pay down the road when these kids end up in juvenile detention and prison and all kinds of other things? It's a practical economic argument.
Yeah. Amen. Very well said. Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate the call. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind?
Hey, not too much, Tom, but this idea of the military taking control is my central thought ever since Donald Trump became president. And the other day, I was talking to a liberal, a friend of mine. Now, mainly I interact with Trump voters and Trump supporters, but when I was interacting with this liberal, I made the comment, what worries me is Republicans are acting like the Congress doesn't even exist. Well, his response was no duh, right? Thanks, Captain Obvious, basically like that.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't blame him, but then I thought about it. They don't have for the first time, they don't have a central adversary. There is no Chuck and Nancy. There is no Obama. There is no central villain, okay? It's just this general nebulous liberal villainy. And one of the guys I was
and people of color. I mean, Trump continues that, and now he's gone after Jews. I mean, it's amazing. I've got a whole rant on that I think I'll get to it probably in the next hour. But anyway, back to you, Dave. But you know, Tucker Carlson last night was demonizing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's congressional district. It's one of the ones that has one of the largest proportions of people of color and who are also immigrants. Legal immigrants in the United States, and he was saying that it was dirty and filthy and this kind of stuff. I mean, anyhow, back to you, Dave. Let's finish your point.
Well, and this Trump supporter, he had a Trump 2020 hat on that I was stuck in the car with for 4 hours. He kept giving this vague threat. Look, if they go through with this impeachment, there's going to be consequences. This mysterious they, keeps ignoring us, and it's to their ultimate demise.
Right.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about this, and look, I was also thinking about this Jedi contract. That Amazon is protesting that Trump favored Microsoft as a revenge thing. Look, and also, this animus against Russia. I have no animus against Russia. Here's the problem. Russia, I've studied for years and years and years. Their military is an attack military now. It is not the equipment they produce is not made for civil stability. It is made to attack and destroy enemy. It's very expensive, and they don't have the money for it. All right, China just released. They're going to release the Tang submarine class. That submarine goes below 90 decibels underwater. It is a very lethal and advanced submarine. All right, look, China and Russia need America to be oppressive, and they need America to be, have a more central government that they can contend with. Well, because it is in their national best interest. Okay,
because they're both being run on a fairly authoritarian basis,
and they're spending money they don't have. All right, Russia does not have They didn't have the military. Putin refers to Soviet era weaponry as legacy. They didn't even have the money for that. They certainly don't have the money now for a professional military with a whole bunch of retirees that are going to, want their pension checks. They're not going to have the money to maintain these space-based and advanced weapons. Okay, especially not with an America that is pushing liberal democracy around the globe. All right, it's just, it's obvious what they're doing. And the thing is the military. I spent 25 years in. I know they are not going to allow any major civil unrest. Basically, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, right?
I have not.
I've been thinking. Well, Valkyrie is when they were going to assassinate Hitler. But there's other ways you could do that, a coup of that nature. You could also do one to keep an authoritarian in power. All right.
So you're suggesting, Dave, the bottom line of everything you're saying here is that you're concerned that Trump is turning the United States into an authoritarian nation and that he may use the military to cement that process.
Well, yes, and you know as well as I do, Tom, because you've lived overseas, sometimes military-ran governments are better. And if liberals, all right, we do not have the ability. We're just going to be slaughtered by these Trumpers that have been.
Wait a minute. What can you name a single government anywhere in the world run by the military that does better than a democratic government?
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of examples of military of governments that are more. Egypt's Pakistan. You know, in Pakistan, the army makes their own cereal for kids and stuff like this.
Oh, the army in Egypt and Pakistan, in both cases, just like Saddam Hussein in Iraq, The Army owns a whole lot of industry that produces things that the Army uses, but also produces things for the civilians. But I wouldn't want to live in Egypt or Pakistan, particularly if I had political opinions that were inconsistent with the military's. Or when you said well run, did you just simply mean stable?
I'm talking about stable and efficient. Tom, look, right now, Republicans, the conservative side of the American political spectrum, is not interested in legislation. They're not interested. All they are interested in is maintaining their authoritarian figurehead, Trump. Okay. Right. The military, on the other hand, lets no good disaster go unused. Okay, there is no. All right,
we saw that after 9/11.
Liberals will have no choice but to say, look, this military thing is better and it keeps me alive, okay, against these Trumpers. It keeps me protected against these out-of-control Trump maniacs with their guns. Okay, but right now, unfortunately, the left of the American political spectrum seems to be the only ones interested in maintaining the constitutional tenets that this government was founded on. I mean, if we cave, long story short, if Donald Trump faces or anything happens, and you can say to yourself, look, I would not get by with that. I would not get by with ignoring a subpoena like that. I would not get by with none of this. Then don't go for it. All right. I mean, don't agree with it. I think that's the only way our republic is going to. Yeah.
In other words, we're a nation of laws, and we have to live as if we are a nation of laws. It's. I get it. Dave, thank you for the call. It's always interesting talking with you. Whew. A lot to digest there. 47 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People, the true people's media. We'll be right back with more of your thoughts on everything from the military budget to Facebook right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And, Canada has a pretty rigorous policy of not letting Americans immigrate. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Jim, Jim, actually, you're listening to a station that's on commercial break right now. Let me pick up somebody who's not. Kathy in Waldport, Oregon, listening on KYAQ. Hey, Kathy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. When you were playing Eisenhower, I got choked up just remembering when Republicans had a moral compass and were patriots. But I'm calling about this 3-year study the military did on lessons learned in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that the Washington Post just published, yeah.
Yeah, the generals considered it unwinnable, but they hid this fact from the public.
Right. But Bush and Cheney knew it.
The Pentagon papers.
And Obama knew it.
Yep. And so I was going to ask the congressman, how come there wasn't more, like the Fulbright hearings during Vietnam, how come there wasn't more oversight? Did the Patriot Act, what effect did that have on dissent and questioning this war?
That's a good question. I'm guessing that the effect of the Patriot Act was chilling. I remember the Fulbright hearings, broadly, but I was a teenager during the Vietnam War. I don't remember watching any particular parts of it. Did those hearings come about as a consequence of Daniel Ellsberg's releasing the Pentagon Papers, or did they precede that?
Oh, they preceded it, I think.
Huh. Yeah, because that was during the Nixon administration, as I recall.
But at least they were questioning it. They were wondering where our money is going, what is the goal.
Right.
And it's obvious the generals in Afghanistan knew we weren't going to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this thing in the Washington Post, I sent a note to Sean last night. I think I woke up in the middle of the night and sent it to you around 2 a.m. or something. But anyhow, saying, is it possible for us to get one of the reporters from the Washington Post to come on our program and lay out basically the dimensions of this? Because it's huge. I mean, this report.
I heard him last night on NPR. It is huge.
Yeah,
it's huge.
And I mean, this is a massive scandal that covers both a Republican and a Democratic administration. There are, as far as I can tell, no heroes from what I've read in the Washington Post. I encourage people who are not familiar with this to go read the Washington Post. You can read it online at WashingtonPost.com. And, they lay it out. And you're right, Kathy. The generals were saying pretty much from the get-go that there's no way that we can win a war with Afghanistan or Iraq. We're going to end up being an occupying force for forever if that's the path we take. It needs, or alternatively, what we should be doing is supporting indigenous forces that are, favorable to our small d democracy, to our point of view. And but Bush and Cheney decided that they wanted to have a war. Bush was very clear. I played the clip from Cindy Sheehan earlier that George W. Bush thought that the number one way for him to get himself reelected in 2005 was to have a war in 2001 or 2002. I guess actually maybe it was early 2002. That would extend over the election cycle in 2004, and he did. He did.
Well, it's so sad that we never learned the lesson from Vietnam.
Yeah.
All the soldiers who died after the Pentagon Papers came out.
I agree.
And now millions have died again.
And in Vietnam, we hadn't learned the lessons of Korea. And in Korea, we hadn't learned the lessons of the Spanish-American War. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Kathy, thank you for the call. It's every generation, it seems, has to learn these lessons all over again. We'll be right back. It's 52 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. 52 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Jim in Lombard, Illinois, listening to WCPT. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I came across this document, the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yes, the United States.
I don't know why I never even hear it mentioned. I think it's a great document, and if it was acknowledged by the powers that be, it would alleviate a whole lot of suffering and strife in this world.
I agree. Unfortunately, the United Nations has no enforcement mechanism for it. So it's basically an outline of principles. But the principles include everyone should have housing, everyone should have food, everyone should have health care, everyone should have education. It basically, and also that, nobody should be being tortured or imprisoned unjustly or inappropriately or unfairly. Well, you can't even torture somebody fairly. Nobody should be tortured. And, check me if I'm missing anything, Jim, but I think that that's the essence of the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
It also says that all human beings have the right to a job, a meaningful job with a living wage.
Right. Yeah. It's like a re-articulation of FDR's Second Bill of Rights. And that was in 1944. I mean, before the United Nations even existed. The United Nations came into existence in the 1950s. So it's, as I recall. So, wow, it's amazing.
It makes no sense to me why the governments and the powers that be in the world are not even attempting to do this, as far as I can see.
Yeah, they should be. Jim, thank you for the call. Winston in Independence, Missouri. Hey, Winston, what's on your mind today?
Hi, I was very impressed that you included Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights in the program. I'm a Democratic National Committee member from Missouri.
Good on you.
And thank you. I was very active in the Bernie campaign
Great.
In 2016, and that was sort of the bonus that I got for doing that. 4 of us from Missouri who supported Bernie were elected to the DNC. And Bernie supporters are still in the minority on the DNC. But one of the primary responsibilities of the DNC is to promote and encourage fulfillment of our platform pledge. And Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights is alive and well in the Democratic platform. There are echoes of it scattered throughout the platform. And I think it's important. The lady who called in just before you read that Economic Bill of Rights was talking about holding the House and taking back the Senate. And that's important, at least to stop the court packing that's going on.
Right.
But we're not really going to see an economic Bill of Rights passed into law until we have Democrats who actually support the party platform. And I think the division gets muddied in people's minds when we use terms like moderate, centrist, progressive, liberal, neoliberal. The only two that matter is you're either a bona fide Democrat who supports the legislation called for in the platform, or you're a corrupted Democrat that's taken money from corporate interests and works quietly behind the scenes to keep the legislation called for in our platform from coming to a vote.
I think that's a pretty reasonable analysis, Winston, and I can't disagree with you on any of it. And I think that this is one of the things. This is the debate that's being played out now in many of the Democratic primaries as we speak. Not the least of which is the Democratic presidential primary.
Absolutely, and I wish that Democratic candidates running for president all the way down to city council were quoting from our platform, talking about our platform. And I think the key question for anyone who wants to be the next president of the United States is how will you address this corruption within the party? How will you get more bona fide Democrats elected? And, of course, it's hard to challenge and defeat an incumbent. So I think changing the hearts and minds of Democrats in Congress and state legislatures who have taken corporate money is the shortest road to victory.
Yeah.
And not to mention working at the state level, where we have 15 states now, with Virginia being added, where we have a Democratic trifecta.
Yeah. Good. All great points, Winston. You know, it's been 3 years since I've even read the Democratic Party platform. I need to dust it off and talk about it on the air again. Thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. So yesterday I was talking about how, it's the holiday season and how good it feels to give things to other people. It actually generally feels better to give than to get for most people. Maybe that's the difference between us and the billionaire class. I don't know. But although there's some good billionaires out there who give a lot too. So I think it's a universal human thing. And I mentioned that, and Lydia and Christy, who are in the development department over at Free Speech TV, Lydia sent me a note saying that Joanne in California had called in a donation in memory of Lil from Omaha and Phil from Kansas City. And that got us brainstorming about being able to give gifts in other people's names, and Lydia's working it out. It's going to take a couple days, but they're going to design a basic card that they can send to you if you want to give a gift in somebody else's name. And then you can fill the card out and say, Dear George, I just, made a donation in your name to Free Speech TV. But the card will, imply that or suggest that. And so if you would like to give a gift, including a holiday gift, to somebody, or excuse me, if you'd like to give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody's name, they're now organized to do that. So you can call 877-378-8669 right now and give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody else's name, and then send that person a card basically saying, hey, here's your holiday gift, or here's your birthday gift, or here, this is something that can be done year round. And this is something Free Speech TV will be doing going forward. And not just for this program, for all programs, presumably. I'm pretty sure. So, that's kind of a cool thing. And, I hope it'll encourage you, if you haven't given a gift yet to Free Speech TV, or if you already have, but you've also been thinking, what am I going to get for, Aunt Maud? And, I can send $20 in the name of Free Speech TV, or to Free Speech TV in Aunt Maud's name, and won't that be nice? So there's that. And that, by the way, doesn't mean that you can't also get, one of the premiums from Free Speech TV. For example, with a $20 gift, you get the sticker that says Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken. With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says Nobody's above the law. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month too, you get the t-shirt, Never Again Is Now. With a $240 gift, which can be $20 a month for a year, you get the online after class with Professor Thom. That's meeting and talking about all, whatever's going on. Oh, also with a $120 gift, we've got my new book, and this is like nobody else can get this way, right? When a publisher ships out books to Amazon or bookstores or whatever, they say, okay, we're shipping this book in, say, January 15th. Everybody has it by January 20th, but you cannot release this until February 5th or whatever the release date is. It's sometime in February. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. But in the case of Free Speech TV sending out books, they will get them at the same time all these other people do, but they will be putting in these little book plates that I'm going through and signing every morning for 15, 20 minutes. We got a big stack of them. And with my autograph in the front of the book. So you'll get an autographed copy, probably before most other people get them in the bookstore or even from Amazon, of my newest book, the Hidden History of the War on Voting. It's actually the hidden history of the Republican war on voting, because the Democrats have always been in favor of voting, but as the book makes clear. I think you'll find it fascinating and infuriating and, great gift and everything else, although just, advance notice. It won't be coming until February. But that's also available with a $120 gift, or $10 a month for a year. So then the $240 is our online class, our Zoom conference. The $360 gift, or $30 a month for a year, is the Study Up with Professor Thom book package. It's the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the Supreme Court and its betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, Hunter in a Farmer's World. This book is creating quite a stir in the psychiatric and psychological community. I think you'll find it fascinating. And especially if you know anybody who has ADHD, or who has a kid with ADHD, or whatever. This is the Bible. This is the book. And that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street and have lunch at a nearby restaurant overlooking an absolutely beautiful scenic view, and we'll have a good time. I really enjoy that. I look forward to when people come to visit. And in fact, we all do. And you'll meet Sean, and you'll meet Nate, and you'll meet Joyce, and possibly Lisa or Louise. We'll see. But in any case, come and hang out with us. So call now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So is romaine safe, or is high-risk romaine simply the new normal? There have been these outbreaks of foodborne illness, E. coli infections across the United States as a consequence of romaine lettuce. Jesse Hirsch is on the line with us. He's the managing editor of the New Food Economy. newfoodeconomy.org is the website. You can tweet him at Jesse_Hirsch, Hirsch. Jesse, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So is high-risk romaine simply the new normal, and is it exclusively romaine?
It's really feeling that way. I wouldn't say that it's exclusively romaine. I'm not sure if you saw that there was a new outbreak announced yesterday.
No, I missed that.
No, and it seems that there's a new one announced just about every week, so it's understandable that people get a little confused and mix them up. But this is a new distinct one in chopped lettuce salad mixes. There have been 8 people reported sick and 3 were hospitalized, which is a very high rate for E. coli. One thing is that these outbreaks seem to be getting more and more virulent. Like more people are suffering from kidney damage and actually being checked into the hospitals than was previously. But one thing is definitely certain is that it seems that it's a problem that is not able to be managed effectively at this point.
So let's get down to fundamental causes here. First of all, What is E. coli, and how does it get on romaine lettuce or other food products? And also, why is this particular form of E. coli so virulent that it can damage people's kidneys to the point that some of these people end up having to be on dialysis for the rest of their lives?
Those are all really good questions. The first thing is E. coli starts with animals, and specifically in the digestive tract of humans or animals.
It's a normal gut bacteria.
It's a normal gut bacteria, exactly. And sometimes, I mean, different strains of it do not affect us at all. We consume E. coli on a daily basis that does not make us very sick. But these particular dangerous strains that are popping up on E. coli, and it has been spinach in the past. There have been other leafy greens that were affected by it, but romaine, which is the most popular lettuce, seems to get more than the lion's share of when these outbreaks happen. And it typically started at a farm nearby, a livestock farm near wherever the romaine is being grown, and somehow it's been transmitted through the water supply.
Oh, interesting. So this is the result of industrialized animal agriculture.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I see a lot of people kind of surmise that maybe it's workers that are not washing their hands and things like that. But typically it is kind of the pairing of 2 different types of industrial agriculture: livestock agriculture and the growing of leafy greens. And
what's so dangerous about the way that we grow livestock, I'm not sure "grow" is even the right word. We're talking about animals, mammals that have limbic brains just like ours. But the thing that's so dangerous about this is that we feed them massive amounts of antibiotics, and so this normal gut bacteria, as it mutates in ways that make it not only more pathogenic but also more antibiotic resistant. Is that the one of the problems that we're seeing in this contaminated romaine?
That's certainly the speculation. Nobody really wants to go out on a limb and say, that this is the exact reason why it's more dangerous than it was 10 years ago. I mean, when the first time that we really saw a leafy green outbreak of E. coli was in 2006, and it was spinach, and that was pretty bad as well. I mean, 200 people went to the hospital. There were a lot of sicknesses, and there was a death, I believe. So it's not that this has not been dangerous, but it does seem like it's happening more frequently and more consistently. The harms have been worse.
Now, romaine is, you just look at it. It's the stuff that they make Caesar salads out of, if people don't know what we're talking about. And most famously Caesar salads, but it's all over the place. Romaine is all kind of squiggly, and I'm lacking a word for it, but
no, it's got lots of nooks and crannies and crevices.
Yeah,
and
a lot
it's
of
easy
texture
for
to
the
it.
bacteria to kind of swirl away inside.
Is that the problem? I mean, is it that it's hard to wash, basically?
I mean, that is one of the problems, is that it's hard to wash because it actually gets inside the fibers of the romaine lettuce, so you can't extract that from a normal wash. And beyond that, if you were cooking meat that had E. coli, there is a temperature that you could cook it to that would kill the bacteria. Romaine is typically consumed raw, so that right there is just an easy reason why it would be more dangerous.
Right. So what should people do if they're concerned about this, if they don't want to, take the risk of ending up on dialysis for the rest of their lives?
I mean, you could make the bold recommendation that maybe try some different kinds of greens, ones that you could cook or that, have less risk. But barring that, I mean, if you stay up to date on the CDC and the FDA websites, they post information pretty regularly about specifically which romaine. I mean, right now, the romaine outbreak the E. coli outbreak in romaine is specifically from Salinas, California grown. So if you look at the package and you have that information when you go to the supermarket, you can know, okay, if it wasn't grown in Salinas, maybe it's safe. But
is it possible
that's a high expectation for consumers to have all that information and to go to a restaurant and say, where did you get your romaine from?
Right. Yeah. In particular, in a restaurant. I mean, there's an Ethiopian restaurant here in town that Louise and I eat at every week, and they always put a little salad on there, and it's romaine. And I noticed this last week. Last weekend, having read your article, and I'm like, whoa, I'm not sure I'm going to eat that.
Yeah. And the CDC makes an official recommendation that you should ask your server, what is there romaine in this, and where was it grown? And right. I mean, that's a lot for the consumer to remember, and it's a lot for the server in the restaurant to have that information.
Are there multiple steps in the distribution chain where romaine grown in Salinas might end up being processed in Bakersfield or being packaged in Las Vegas and into little plastic baggies for us to buy in the store, and we just don't even know that it actually started in Salinas?
Yeah, that's absolutely a good point. I was at Consumer Reports before I worked at New Food Economy, and I was working there when they had last year. If you remember, there was just like outbreak after outbreak, and more and more people getting sick. And as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, that's what they kind of figured out is there was so much commingling. If you are a company that makes bagged salads, then when you take in the romaine that's been tainted by E. coli and mix it in with a bunch of other lettuce, the problem has gotten exponentially bigger and more difficult to track and trace.
So at my local store, there's a New Seasons nearby. There's a Whole Foods nearby. Louise and I frequently shop at both of them. Sometimes they'll have raw romaine. I mean, it's not bagged. It's just like, here it is. And it's labeled organic. And I always assumed that was probably coming from a local source, probably even a greenhouse, given that Oregon doesn't have a 24 or a 12-month growing season. Is there, what do I do? I mean, should I ask the store? Where'd your romaine come from?
If you really want that romaine, then it might be worth asking the store. I do know that when I was talking to members of the industry about this, they have been taking efforts because this is no good for their bottom line either. I mean, they don't want, in your mind, romaine to be associated with sickness. I mean, it just doesn't work for them and their bottom line. So they've been taking a lot of proactive steps. And one thing that's big that they were saying is that supermarkets should, and I don't know how much this is actually happening, be posting a lot more useful information to consumers. I mean, when you went to the Whole Foods near your house, were there any signs up? Did anything give you any indication of where that?
It's been a month since I was there. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to do that more, but it is a lot to remember. Greenhouse grown romaine does seem to be some significantly safer. I've seen a lot less of outbreaks that come down to that, and that it's the way that it's grown really.
Yeah. Well, for people like me who are vegans, it's like, you want to eat a lot of green stuff, right? It's like it's really good, it's really healthy. But anyhow, Jesse Hirsch, the managing editor at New Food Economy, newfoodeconomy.org is the website. Jesse, thanks for dropping by.
All right. Thanks so much, Tom.
Great talking with you today. And important stuff, important news. We'll be back. It's coming up on 15 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls. In particular, we're talking about war and peace and FDR and all these issues. And welcome back, Liz in Los Angeles. Hey, Liz, what's up?
Hi, Tom. You break on the break. Sometimes you read from various books, and you were reading about Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, really? Okay. Because we record a new one every day, but we've got hundreds of those now in our automation system, and they play on our nonprofit stations while our for-profit stations are doing their news breaks at the top and bottom of the hour. And so I don't know what book was playing at any given moment, but I know that there is one. There's a couple of books about the media. What did you have a question, or did you want to make a point, Liz?
I wanted to make a comment about Rush Limbaugh.
All right, go for it.
Well, the book talks about how he got to be so powerful and everything. It's the excerpt. That's my understanding. But I saw Rush Limbaugh before he got on radio, when he was on television with an audience. And there was a guy who questioned him, and Limbaugh became a buffoon. He just couldn't answer anything when he was confronted.
That was actually after he had started his radio show. He got a TV show maybe 4 or 5 years after he started. Excuse me. He started his radio show. I think it was in '87. I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was '87 that he started his radio show, maybe '88. And like around '92, '93, maybe it was even the first year of Bill Clinton's presidency, he got a TV show that lasted less than a year, as I recall, because he just didn't do TV very well. Is that what you're talking about, Liz?
Yeah, and what I'm saying is I think he was very manipulated because he always had control. He can always push the off button. He could rant at people, and they weren't able to respond to him. Whereas on TV, these people, this one guy was confronting him, and he couldn't answer him.
Right.
And he's not as smart and slick as he thinks he is, but I think the powers that be in the conservative radio area, he was somebody that they wanted, and he sounded good when he had no adversaries confronting him.
Yeah, this is one of the big differences between conservative talk radio and progressive talk radio. On this program, I regularly have conservatives on, and I argue or debate with them, whatever you want to call it. I try to make it respectful anyway. Yesterday, for example, we had two. We had Julio Rivera and we had Brian Pruitt. And, both Republicans. In fact, I just tweeted to Brian just a few minutes ago. Because I know my issues and I can hold my own. You will not hear strong progressive voices having a debate with Sean Hannity or Rush Limbaugh. In fact, Sean Hannity got rid of Alan Combs. I don't want that anymore. Because Alan Combs was regularly eating his lunch. This was back when it was Hannity and Combs on Fox News. And, it has just become, right-wing talk radio has just become its own little insular bubble. I go to the big talk radio convention every year that Talkers Magazine puts on. And, 90% of the people there are right-wing hosts, because that's 90% of talk radio. And it just astonishes me how they talk to each other. And I get on these panels and debate them, and I'll pull up something, and they'll behave like they don't even know what I'm talking about. Anyhow, Liz, thanks for the call. Your point is well taken, and a good observation. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and David in San Francisco. Hey, David, what's up?
Hey, how are you, Tom? I don't know if you can get this background. I'm in a restaurant and they're playing Grateful Dead here. I'll step outside.
It sounds fine, David. What's up?
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, two things. I heard the lettuce interview, the romaine lettuce interview.
Yeah.
And the idea of putting all your eggs in one basket, the idea that the greatest amount of romaine lettuce in America is tainted, well, that would imply that the processing is all being done at one place.
Actually, let me just disabuse you of that notion. The tainted romaine represents a minority of the romaine that's out there in the marketplace. There are people all over America eating romaine right now, and they're not getting sick. It's a problem. But it's, if it was a majority of the romaine, you'd have tens of thousands of people coming down ill. Instead, you've got hundreds.
Well, right. But the headlines are, I'm kind of looking at it with the idea that is there a corporate takeover of romaine lettuce farms? And by doing headlines that romaine is tainted means that all of a sudden those farmers can't deal with it, whether or not they process it themselves or with clean facilities.
Right.
It's still I went over to a Costco not too long ago, tried to buy one of their Caesar salads, and they were not selling them because of this because of this ban.
Oh, really?
And as your guest was saying, this was the additional ban, and I think he was saying there was another one last week or earlier in the week. And
yesterday, I think he said.
But but to the bigger point, whether or not these corporations have taken so much of the market share of romaine, and they're doing all of their processing in one location, or with the same bad, if you remember with the Nuremberg trials, they prosecuted the architects of the concentration camps because they were designing facilities that were designed to kill people. And so with that in mind, are they designing romaine processing centers with tainted water? And is there a pattern in practice coming into play here where they're using gray water for processing as opposed to, as you may know, with say like solar water distilling, it's very easy for a farm to just put up solar panels, distill their water in about as cheap as you could possibly do. Right. And as it
what Jesse said, David, and I was listening very carefully because my assumption was that they were using manure as a fertilizer, and that would be the way that it would get in. But apparently that's not the case. Apparently, he said that it seems to be that a large cattle operation, or maybe it's a hog farm, or some animal agriculture operation opens up down the road, and they're producing poisoned feces that and because these animals are living on antibiotics, they don't have normal BMs, they don't make cow pies the way that they used to, or cow patties. Instead, they just have this continuous diarrhea, and they accumulate this in these giant lagoons, these giant pools of waste, and it gets into the groundwater. And once it gets into the groundwater, it contaminates the groundwater, and of course, the groundwater is what's being used to irrigate the romaine, a quarter mile away, and that's a structural problem that has to do with animal agriculture.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I was listening to a Kansas station, and they were talking about this corporate, the animal corporate combines like that. And this woman called in, and she said that she could actually smell a facility 75 miles away.
Wow.
And so, with the dust blowing, in Kansas flat plains, the dust will blow for, tens of miles. But in her case, she was talking about in a bad windy day, 75 miles away. So you can imagine that fecal material blowing 75 miles. And of course, we've heard this with the organic foods industry, the drift of Monsanto's
of both
Roundup.
GMO seeds and or pollen and as well the drift of the pesticides and the herbicides. Two movies. There's two movies that I strongly recommend everybody should watch that will inform you about these kinds of issues. The first is one that Arnold Schwarzenegger did. It's available on Netflix. It's an hour and 20 minutes or so. It's not that long, and it's called Game Changers. And in the last third of that movie, in this movie Game Changers on Netflix, they talk about how massive animal agriculture has become in the United States and how destructive it is. How there's something like 1,000 gallons of water in a single hamburger. I don't remember the exact numbers, but and how animal agriculture is responsible for a quarter, as I recall, I've only seen the movie once, of all the pollution in the United States. That's one. And the other one is the movie Louise and I saw this weekend. We went out Sunday afternoon for a movie and saw Dark Waters, the new Mark Ruffalo movie, about a lawyer who takes on DuPont, which was poisoning the local water supply in this community in West Virginia. And, it's not that different. I mean, this was chemical poisoning, but we're talking here about biological poisoning. But those two movies are just so informative. David, thank you for the call. They're and really worth checking out. So, if you haven't seen Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo and cast, go watch it. It's an amazing movie, and at the end you want to stand up and cheer. But it's filled with suspense. And then on Netflix, be sure to check out Game Changers. It's just it'll change your life. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And I'm not usually sitting here saying, oh, watch this movie. I mean, it's usually I'm telling you where to read an article. This is amazing stuff. So yesterday I was talking about how, it's the holiday season and how good it feels to give things to other people. It actually generally feels better to give than to get for most people. Maybe that's the difference between us and the billionaire class. I don't know. But although there's some good billionaires out there who give a lot too. So I think it's a universal human thing. And I mentioned that, and Lydia and Christy, who are in the development department over at Free Speech TV, Lydia sent me a note saying that Joanne in California had called in a donation in memory of Lil from Omaha and Phil from Kansas City. And that got us brainstorming about being able to give gifts in other people's names, and Lydia's working it out. It's going to take a couple days, but they're going to design a basic card that they can send to you if you want to give a gift in somebody else's name. And then you can fill the card out and say, Dear George, I just, made a donation in your name to Free Speech TV. But the card will, imply that or suggest that. And so if you would like to give a gift, including a holiday gift, to somebody, or excuse me, if you'd like to give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody's name, they're now organized to do that. So you can call 877-378-8669 right now and give a gift to Free Speech TV in somebody else's name, and then send that person a card basically saying, hey, here's your holiday gift, or here's your birthday gift, or here, this is something that can be done year round. And this is something Free Speech TV will be doing going forward. And not just for this program, for all programs, presumably. I'm pretty sure. So, that's kind of a cool thing. And, I hope it'll encourage you, if you haven't given a gift yet to Free Speech TV, or if you already have, but you've also been thinking, what am I going to get for, Aunt Maud? And, I can send $20 in the name of Free Speech TV, or to Free Speech TV in Aunt Maud's name, and won't that be nice? So there's that. And that, by the way, doesn't mean that you can't also get, one of the premiums from Free Speech TV. For example, with a $20 gift, you get the sticker that says "Gravity, the only law Trump hasn't broken." With a $50 gift, you get the Free Speech TV tote bag that says "Nobody's above the law." With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month too, you get the T-shirt "Never Again Is Now." With a $240 gift, which can be $20 a month for a year, you get the online after class with Professor Thom. That's meeting and talking about all whatever's going on. Oh, also with a $120 gift, we've got my new book, and this is like nobody else can get this way, right? When a publisher ships out books to Amazon or bookstores or whatever, they say, okay, we're shipping this book in, say, January 15th. Everybody has it by January 20th, but you cannot release this until February 5th or whatever the release date is. It's sometime in February. I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. But in the case of Free Speech TV sending out books, they will get them at the same time all these other people do, but they will be putting in these little book plates that I'm going through and signing every morning for 15, 20 minutes. We got a big stack of them. And with my autograph in the front of the book. So you'll get an autographed copy probably before most other people get them in the bookstore or even from Amazon of my newest book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. It's actually the hidden history of the Republican war on voting, because the Democrats have always been in favor of voting, but as the book makes clear. I think you'll find it fascinating and infuriating and, great gift and everything else, although just, advance notice. It won't be coming until February. But that's also available with a $120 gift or $10 a month for a year. So then the $240 is our online class, our Zoom conference. The $360 gift at $30 a month for a year is the Study Up with Professor Thom book package. It's the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, the hidden history of the Supreme Court and its betrayal of America, and my new book on ADHD, Hunter in a Farmer's World. This book is creating quite a stir in the psychiatric and psychological community. I think you'll find it fascinating. And especially if you know anybody who has ADHD or who has a kid with ADHD or whatever, this is the Bible. This is the book, and that's with a $360 gift. And then with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out here for the last hour of the show, and then we'll walk down the street and have lunch at a nearby restaurant overlooking an absolutely beautiful scenic view, and we'll have a good time. I really enjoy that. I look forward to when people come to visit. And in fact, we all do. And you'll meet Sean, and you'll meet Nate, and you'll meet Joyce, and possibly Lisa or Louise. We'll see. But in any case, come and hang out with us. So call now, 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. And that music can only mean one thing: time for the good, the bad, and the very, very ugly. The good: Denmark for planning artificial wind farm islands that could power over 10 million homes. In 2018, Denmark produced 41% of its energy from wind power, the highest level in Europe. Denmark recently passed an ambitious climate act which will cut greenhouse gas emissions by 70% from the 1990 levels by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. Wow, is all I can say. The bad: President Trump for making weird, not true statements about water-efficient toilets. People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times. It isn't clear what standards President Trump was talking about or what exactly he asked the EPA to look into. However, he also suggested that most states have a water surplus that make low-flow toilets and sinks unnecessary, which is also not true and very bad. And the very, very ugly right-wing Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro. He is angry that 16-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg is speaking out for indigenous rights, so he called her a brat. Thunberg had tweeted a response to the killing of 2 indigenous leaders in northeast Brazil. She said indigenous people are literally being murdered for trying to protect the forests from illegal deforestation. Over and over again, it is shameful that the world remains silent about this. But wait, there's more. Indigenous communities in the Amazon are regularly threatened by illegal miners or loggers, and Bolsonaro has said he will open more indigenous territories to extractive industries. Killing indigenous leaders to take their land is colonialism, and that is very, very ugly. Indeed. So, getting back to all of our conversations here, Eric in Birmingham, Alabama. Hey, Eric, what's on your mind today?
Are you talking to me?
I am. You're on the air.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm calling because I've been listening to the hearings, the Senate hearings, and the Steele dossier constantly keep coming up. But they blaming the Democrats and the Clinton candidacy for producing that dossier. And they wasn't the ones that produced that dossier. That dossier was produced by, I believe, the Heritage Organization, who got it for one of their candidates, but the candidate dropped out.
Yeah, it was originally paid for by some right-wing group or billionaire who was funding a right-wing newspaper out of Washington, D.C., and it was opposition research against Donald Trump, and it was supposed to help Marco Rubio. And then when Rubio dropped out of the race, the Democrats bought basically the research.
Well, my point is, why, when you look, they constantly bringing it up in the hearing. Why, and they bring it up as though it was the Democratic Party and then the Clinton candidacy that wanted that dossier done for them. And the Democrat senators, they're not correcting that. They're not correcting them.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can't, because they're continually telling a lie. And you have to stop the lies.
I know This is the problem. I mean, this is absolutely the problem. And Eric, thank you for the call on that. In fact, we've been playing Dwight Eisenhower today. Let me play some FDR. If you can bring up the 360, Sean. This is Franklin Roosevelt talking about the technique that Donald Trump and the Republican Party are using right now.
Remember, a number of years ago, there was a book, Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf.
Written by Hitler himself. The technique was all set out in Hitler's book, and it was copied by the aggressors of Italy and Japan. According to that technique, you should never use a small falsehood, always a big one, for its very fantastic nature would make it more credible. If only you keep repeating it over and over and over again.
See, there was a time in America when Americans actually understood what propaganda was, and they knew how to spot this stuff. And, sadly, that time is long past. Nate in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Nate, what's up?
Thank you, Tom, for all that you do. I've been listening to you for a long, long time. And I just wanted to let you know that your guest was right about the greenhouse growing of romaine lettuce, and that there's a lot of ways to grow in a greenhouse. One really great one is aquaponics. Have you heard of that?
I have. And so what you're saying, Nate, is that greenhouse-grown romaine is almost very, very difficult to be contaminated by E. coli from nearby factory farm animal operations.
Yes, especially if it's grown aquaponically, because as you did mention, the E. coli that's dangerous comes from animals, but it doesn't come from cold-blooded animals like fish. And so aquaponics, you feed fish, and they excrete ammonia that becomes nitrogen, and the plants use that nitrogen and grow very efficiently and productively. But the fish excrement, if you will, doesn't contain any E. coli. It does contain E. coli, but not the kind that makes people sick because they're cold-blooded animals.
Right. Fascinating. So aquaculture is where you've got an operation that's both running a greenhouse and growing some fish.
Well, no, aquaculture is just the fish. Aquaponics combines hydroponics with aquaculture, essentially.
That's fascinating.
And there's some great research going on in Santa Fe, and anybody who wants to come who's listening in Santa Fe should come on Saturday to the Santa Fe Community College and the greenhouse grand opening that we're having out there.
Oh, cool. That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Nate. And thanks to KTRC for carrying our show. I think KTRC is our oldest commercial affiliate radio station. They've been with us from the get-go.
I've been listening since the beginning. Thank you so much.
I think it's been like 15 years. Thank you, Nate. Good to talk to you. Ivan in Bartlett, Illinois, listening to WCPT. Hey, Ivan, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I find it so sad, Tom, that Tulsi Gabbard, the presidential candidate calling for the end of the racket of war in the Middle East, ending support of Saudi Arabia, who spread radical Wahhabism, took down the World Trade Center, and killed our military members right here in Florida just the other day, is ridiculed and called a Russian asset and an Assad apologist. The Washington Post report proves that Tulsi is right and has been right all along.
Yeah, about the wars, absolutely. My problem with Tulsi Gabbard has to do with her support of Mr. Modi in India and her support of Hindu nationalism. And what I see as growing fascism in India. But her position on our war in Afghanistan and Iraq is absolutely right. She was there.
And she's not supporting Modi in that way. She is willing to negotiate with Modi.
Well, okay.
So I find that a Republican talking point, Tom.
All right. Well, it may be. Sorry. It may be. I mean, she's welcome to come on the show and talk about it. We have opened that option to all the Democratic candidates and contacted every single one of their campaigns and said, if you'd like, you can come on the program. You can even have a whole hour and you can talk to the people instead of to Tom if you'd like. And a few of them have taken us up on it. Tulsi Gabbard has not, at least so far. Ivan, thanks for the call. Ginger in Eureka, California. Hey, Ginger, what's on your mind today?
Hello, you got to me.
Hey, yes. Thank you for waiting.
Well, I really wanted to comment on a man who was on your program. It's got to be at least a half hour ago now. He was someone who is in the Democratic Council someplace, I think in the Midwest.
Oh, the guy in Missouri who was talking about how we need to go back to the core principles that are articulated in the Democratic Party platform.
Exactly. He gave me the first real ray of hope that I've had in an awfully long time.
That's great.
I was on my Democratic Council, and all we did was to back the candidate that was chosen by the party, ending up with our party separating into Bernie people and Hillary people.
Yeah, that was a tough time 4 years ago.
It was a mess, and I left the council, but I didn't leave the Democratic Party, and I kept wondering why aren't we pushing our core principles rather than the particular candidate. Of course, the particular candidates have to push themselves.
Right.
I have my preferences, but I will vote for whichever one wins the nomination.
Yeah, me too.
And if that's where we have to be. And in order to be there, we really have to let people know what it is we want.
I agree, Ginger. I absolutely agree. And I think that, the founding, going back to the core principles that FDR laid out, he articulated with the New Deal, that LBJ came back to. I mean, I was not happy with LBJ about the Vietnam War, but setting that aside, his domestic policies were brilliant. I mean, it was the next step, creating Medicare from scratch, creating Medicaid from scratch. developing. I'm not sure if he started food stamps or he expanded them, but I mean, a lot of stuff came out of those programs.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
So, Ginger, spot on. We do need to get back to core principles in the Democratic Party. And frankly, the good news is there's a lot of candidates out there that are doing it. And welcome back, John in Hillsboro, Oregon. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I was listening to another radio program a couple nights ago, and they had this person who was working for the HUD industry agency back in Herbert Walker's, and she was seeing some irregularities of HUD. They were losing $11 million a day. Mm-hmm. So she was asking about what was going on, and she dived into the whole thing, and then she did some more whatever. But she came up, not just her, but a couple other people, that $21 trillion has been missing since been ciphered off the U.S. Treasury for the last I'd say about 8 years. And
well, hang on just a second, John. The military, the entire Pentagon budget is just a little north of $700 billion. That's true. 7/10 of $1 trillion. So how do you siphon $21 trillion out of an annual budget of less than $1 trillion?
Yeah, I understand that.
I can see that since World War II. The $21 trillion has gone missing. Well, I know when Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul got together back in the 2000s. I think it was 2005, 2006. It was right around then. Ron Paul and Bernie Sanders got together, and they got passed a piece of legislation that required an audit of the Pentagon. It was the first time the Pentagon had been audited in years. And that audit, as I recall, showed that there was $2 trillion missing, or at least unaccounted for, that they couldn't track it down. And that number sounds probable to me. 21 trillion. I've seen the number. I saw it in a news story just a few months ago. In fact, I reported it on this program. And, a number of people came back at me on that, mostly on Twitter, saying, how can you have $21 trillion missing when you got a budget that's less than $1 trillion a year? I mean, if all of the budget was used for 30 years, that'd be $21 trillion. And actually, you'd probably have to go back 50 years because, like I said, in 2000, the entire military budget was only $340 billion.
Well, according to this lady, she says a lot of this is going to that secret space program that's going on right now.
Well, that's not missing money. That's just money that's not showing up in the budget as a specific line item. But the money is there. I mean, you can see that.
Well, she was going on talking about other kind of bills that were appropriate, were made or whatever, that allowed a lot of money not to be accounted for.
Sure. Well, and actually,
the books are cooked.
That's not an unreasonable thing. There are some budgets, like if you're putting together a budget to develop. Well, I mean, the most famous example is the Manhattan Project. When they were developing the atomic bomb, they could not have that budget be publicly known. I mean, that would be like signaling to Hitler and to Tojo that we were building something, that we were building a bomb, and they had to hide that budget and that money. I understand that. I don't like the bomb, but I get it.
Well, if I could mention the name of the person, her name is.
Oh, go ahead.
Kathleen Austin Fitz.
Okay, I'll have to look around. John, John, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, waste and fraud and Pentagon budget are words that naturally fit together in the same sentence, and have probably from the beginning of the U.S. military. But the fetishizing of the military in the United States, active duty military personnel can get on the plane first. That kind of stuff, it just, I think we've gone too far, frankly. We'll be right back. Thom Hartmann here. My new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, has arrived. What if the Supreme Court did not have the power to strike down laws? Discover the hidden history of judicial review and this scam called original intent. Learn how we can save the planet by modernizing the Supreme Court. And most important, how we can democratize the Supreme Court now before it's too late. From the time Americans wake up until the time we go to bed, everything we do, touch, ingest, breathe, and use has been touched by the Supreme Court. In this book, I lay out the history of the Supreme Court from Alexander Hamilton until how the court overstepped its constitutional powers. America does not belong to the kings and queens of the court. It belongs to the people. The hidden history of the Supreme Court and the betrayal of America is available now in fine bookstores everywhere. Well, welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Connie in Greenville, South Carolina. Hey, Connie, what's on your mind today?
Oh, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I was listening to the speech that FDR made a long time ago, and and you had mentioned that people don't know propaganda when they hear it today. No, they don't.
That's correct.
I was not quite that old enough, but I do remember growing up, my uncles who had come back from the war had told me about Tokyo Rose and Axis Sally. Axis Sally was an American who I don't know. I guess she was getting a heck of a lot of money because and she was I'm in the car. That's why I was watching, and she would just put out all false information to all the soldiers that were over there to disrupt their emotions and make them feel homesick.
Yep.
And Tokyo Rose did the same thing. Only she was she was a Japanese person. As I think I remember, she was quite wealthy, come from a very influential family. So anyway, here in America we have Fox.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, how if you're, you don't pick this up as an American. I find more stuff on Facebook, and what I do is if I get this crazy, a posting, and I know it's not right, I will click on the person that wrote it, not the person that sent it to me, and it never fails. It never fails. You can't even find them, because then I go back to Facebook and I try and look them up. You can't even get to them.
Huh.
They're just, it's like a habit with me now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is the new era that we live in. We live in the propaganda age, and ironically, in 2010, in the fall of 2010, when or maybe it was January 2010, when the Citizens United decision was announced by the Supreme Court, in his dissent, John Paul Stevens, in his dissent, said, under this decision, Tokyo Rose would have had the legal right to fund American politicians and broadcast her propaganda in the United States. And
I didn't know that one.
You can go back. You can read it on the Supreme Court's website. Just read the dissent in Citizens United. It's the most chilling thing. And President Obama, you recall, in his State of the Union address in 2011, said this basically. He didn't mention Tokyo Rose, but he said, this Citizens United decision is going to distort our politics. And Sam Alito was sitting there, and he said, he mouthed no and shook his head back and forth. But Obama was absolutely right, and Sam Alito was absolutely wrong. Connie, excellent point. Thank you for calling and making it. I appreciate it. Brian in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Well, the post office, Tom.
Okay, go for it.
I hear that Megan Brennan announced her retirement next January.
Who is Megan Brennan?
She's the Postmaster General.
Okay.
And that concerns me that I believe there's a board of governors for the post office. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And those are all Trump appointees?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it just
typically when they create an agency with the Board of Governors, they try to stagger. I mean, Amtrak's the same thing, NPR is the same thing. The Broadcasting Board of Governors. I used to have a friend who was on it. They try to stagger those placements on those boards so that they typically over a 10-year period at least, so that even on an 8-year presidential term, you're getting members who are appointed by both Democratic and Republican presidents. I would guess that it's the same thing with the Postal Board, but I don't know personally.
Yeah, I just received something from our local AFL-CIO telling us to contact all of our representatives. I don't know if that's going to make a difference or not.
Yeah. If you've got a link on that, Brian, if you could tweet it to me, I'd really appreciate it. It's the best way to get information to me. I do read my Twitter feed, and it's Thom_Hartmann, and I'll dig into it, and we can talk about it on the air. Brian, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. Janet in Gustine, California. Hey, Janet, what's up?
Yes, I'm kind of worried. I would like to see Bernie Sanders as the president of the United States, and I'm kind of worried that if he stays with the Democratic Party, the party will choose Joe Biden because it doesn't want to lose all of the wealth that it gets from the Wall Street, the banks, and et cetera. And I think he should run as an independent.
That would be suicide, politically speaking.
You think so?
Yeah, we have not elected an independent president, I don't think, in the history of the Republic. Teddy Roosevelt tried it, Ross Perot tried it. Yeah, no, Janet, I share your concerns about the party blocking out either Bernie or Elizabeth Warren, progressives, and it would happen on the second ballot when the super delegates can vote. And I hope that it doesn't shake out that way. I really do. But it's probably the big possibility that is haunting a lot of progressives all across the United States, and it has to be haunting Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. But the answer is to get active, which brings me to the way I wrap up this show every single day and have for 15 years. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not something that we just sit around and it happens organically and naturally and falls out of the sky. Democracy in a constitutionally limited republic requires that we all participate, which means getting out there, getting active, telling your friends and neighbors and relatives about progressive media, waking people up, and making sure that they're registered to vote. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.